Chapter 136. Without compensation? The little stoic asked expressionlessly. The scholar's mouth twitched. He instantly understood her meaning and hastily replied, with compensation, with compensation. All the rewards from the missions will belong to you. It's the monthly residence rights for high-class residential areas. Every household has to complete a level 3 mission or above once a month to exchange for it. Right now, the better houses in the city are concentrated in the east and center of the city. Priority will be given to mystic cultivators, or people with special abilities. As for other normal people, even if they have spare money, they can't buy a house in a better place. Got it? So be it. They were a big family, and Arbor also wanted everyone to live in a slightly better place. After all, she didn't know how long they would have to stay here. Walking to the table where the crystal ball was placed, Arbor naturally placed her small hand on it. She had tested this kind of mystic energy test before. She only needed to inject a wisp of mystic energy, and layers of white mist would quickly surface from the bottom of the transparent crystal ball. Normal people wouldn't have any reaction when touching this crystal ball. Only mystic cultivators could awaken the mystic energy inside this crystal ball. This crystal ball's interior just so happened to be divided into 15 layers, representing the highest level of mystic energy. At this moment, 4 layers had already lit up between Arbor's fingers. When she put down her small hand and turned around, she saw Gu Qingfeng and the others' astonished gazes. A level 4 mystic cultivator, the scholar murmured and reflexively wiped his eyes. She really was a mystic cultivator. It seemed that his eyesight was pretty good. No wonder he felt a bit strange when he first saw this child. The scholar couldn't resist chuckling. Little fellow, you are the youngest mystic cultivator I've seen in all these years. City Lord Gu also walked up with a hearty laugh. That's great. Our Shijo city just happens to need all the mystic cultivators and body cultivators to join us and jointly build an indestructible city defense. And my second uncle is a body cultivator. Arbor spoke indifferently and extended a hand toward the scholar. Just give us a small quiet courtyard. Don't forget to make up for all the furniture. Gu Qingfeng's mouth twitched, and he glanced at the child in spite of himself with a smile. He nodded and said, Of course. Mr. Zhang arranged for them. Miss Chow's family to live in the residence in Pear Blossom Alley. It's also closer to the city lord's mansion. If you don't have anything to do, Miss Chow is welcome to visit the city lord's mansion. Such a young level 4 mystic cultivator was truly too rare. He was either a genius or a genius. Gu Qingfeng was very happy to befriend him. The people from Daybreak sect who were tossed aside all had very unsightly expressions. Especially Jia Mingren, whose leg was broken by Arbor. His eyes were filled with disbelief. He himself was only a level 4 mystic cultivator, so he knew how much effort he had put in to reach this height. But now this little girl who looked no more than 7 or 8 years old, this kind of terrifying talent really made people want to break it. There was jealousy in Jia Mingren's eyes. A Daybreak sect disciple suddenly said, Why you child? Why haven't you released junior martial brother Jia after taking the magnetite? Arbor's small hand shook lightly as he pulled back the rope. At the same time he suddenly flew up and kicked Jia Mingren's crotch. In that instant, many of the men present abruptly tensed up and felt a bit unwell. Jia Mingren maintained a strange sitting posture, and was sent flying by the girl's kick. He didn't even have the chance to howl before he fainted from the pain. And so on and so forth. Chapter 137. Duan Yu simply didn't know what to say. Compared to Jia Mingren's infinite misery, he suddenly felt very touched. Little Miss was so friendly to him before. As expected, it all depended on one's looks. A certain youth who felt good about himself, wasn't angry at all and even looked at the child with a grin. The stoic face was expressionless and only glanced at him strangely before retracting her gaze. She thought to herself, there might be something wrong with this youth's brain. She just kicked his junior brother Jia so hard that he fainted. Yet he can still smile at her. This reaction wasn't normal, right? Shang Kuan's flustered and exasperated expression was normal. Arbor's gaze shifted to Shang Kuan and the others and asked good-naturedly, Do you also want someone to crawl under you? Shang Kuan and the others froze and shuddered for no reason before retreating a few steps. Arbor remained calm and unruffled. If not, then we're leaving. Wait. A youth next to Shang Kuan blocked the carriage with a sullen expression. Did City Lord Gu forget something? As a mystic cultivator, don't you need to scan your inner world and hand over some supplies? Gu Qingfeng was a bit embarrassed. Especially when he saw Arbor looking at them like they were beasts, Gu Qingfeng was truly speechless. Gu Qingfeng laughed awkwardly. Young Master Li, the little girl is so young, so she shouldn't have many things in her inner world, so she doesn't need to scan it. How can that be? Rules are rules. City Lord Gu, you're wrong to say that. If everyone is like the little girl, shirking their age and not scanning their inner world, wouldn't the city lose a lot of supplies? Li Xiang said sternly with a cold face. Shameless. Arbor harumphed. You even want to snatch a baby's things? You're an adult in vain. Gu Qingfeng, hurry up if you want to scan. A bunch of men. All of you are so wishy-washy, so boring. What should he do if he really wanted to beat this child to death? Why was her speech so unpleasant to the ears? The people from Daybreak sect were so angry that their faces turned green. However, when their gazes landed on the youth in black next to the child, they didn't dare to move. After all, the strength that the black-clothed youth had just displayed was something that even their second senior brother, Shang Kuan, had to suffer. How would the others dare to go up and throw their lives away? Gu Qingfeng braced himself and ordered someone to bring over the ancient mystic mirror. He forced a smile at Xiao Mu. Miss Qiao, there's no need to be nervous. The ancient mystic mirror scanning your inner world won't cause you any harm. It'll be over soon. You just have to stand there without moving. Let me. Daybreak Sect's Li Xiang directly snatched the ancient mystic mirror from Gu Qingfeng's hand and strode forward to Arbor, saying coldly, I'll say the ugly things first. If you recklessly use your Xian consciousness to resist, don't blame me if your Xian consciousness is damaged by the ancient profound mirror. If even a single hair on my body is harmed, I will use your lowly life to compensate for it. Arbor spoke softly, his gaze fixed on Li Xiangshi. The latter felt as if all the blood in his body had been frozen, and he couldn't say a word. Clang. The black-clothed youth drew his sword in response, looking as if he was about to attack at any moment. Amidst the tension, Gu Qingfeng hastily stepped forward to smooth things over. This city lord should personally scan the little girl's inner world. He felt so bitter. The little girl didn't look easy to bully, so why did Daybreak Sect still have to go against her? No need. Li Xiang stubbornly pushed away Gu Qingfeng's arm, furious that he was intimidated by a little child's aura. Many people gathered at the city gate. Many commoners expressed great curiosity when they heard that a mystic cultivator, who was only 7 years old, was going to scan the inner world on the spot. Chapter 138. She was clearly such a small child, but Li Xiang didn't dare to look into her eyes. He felt that those demonic pupils were like an icy abyss. If he wasn't careful, even his soul might be sucked in. He gripped the mirror tightly and took a deep breath. He couldn't help but secretly laugh at his nervousness. Wasn't she just a level 4 mystic cultivator? She was just a little younger and more talented than normal people. Could it be that she could cause trouble? Damn girl, it's time to let you have a good taste. He raised the ancient mystic mirror and abruptly channeled a large amount of mystic energy into it. With a sneer on his lips, he aimed the mirror at the little girl's forehead. Wei Ziqin, Xiao Zhongbang, and the others' hearts were hanging high, and a trace of nervousness appeared in their eyes. Normal people couldn't see it, but mystic cultivators could. A thick milky white halo shot out from the mirror and directly transmitted into Arbor's conscious at lightning speed. Young Master Li! Gu Qingfeng cried out in shock. Li Xiang was going to destroy the little girl's conscious. Why would a normal scan of the inner world require so much mystic energy? This Li Xiang! Gu Qingfeng's pupils contracted, and he cursed inwardly. Just as everyone thought that they would soon be able to admire a young mystic cultivator's inner world through the ancient mystic mirror, Li Xiang suddenly screamed. Li Xiang suddenly let out a blood-curdling scream. The ancient profound mirror in his hand suddenly exploded. The fragments were instantly crushed into powder by a terrifying force, wantonly flying everywhere. Wah! Li Xiang fell heavily to the ground with his limbs in the air, and spat out a large mouthful of blood. His eyes were filled with boundless terror as he looked at the child who stood silently in front of him without even moving an inch, as if he was looking at a ghost. You! Li Xiang raised his hand with great difficulty and pointed shakily in the child's direction. You're conscious. There's. Li Xiang spat out another mouthful of blood, and the blood actually contained fragments of his internal organs. Junior Marshal Brother Li. Shang Kuan cried out in horror and raised his hand to help Li Xiang up. Li Xiang clutched Shang Kuan's sleeve tightly and said intermittently, Senior Marshal Brother, don't provoke this little. He tilted his head and didn't make another sound. Shang Kuan's eyes were filled with horror as he checked his breathing. He was already dead. Junior Marshal Brother Li. Another Daybreak sect disciple pounced over and touched it with his hand. Astonishment appeared in his eyes. All the bones in Junior Brother Li's body shattered into pieces in an instant. Without the support of his bones, he collapsed like a deflated ball. No one knew what had happened, and even Xiao Mu was dumbfounded. The mystic cultivators couldn't understand it, let alone the normal people watching. They saw Li Xiang inexplicably fly backward by himself, and then he died on his own. The only similarity was that everyone was looking at Arbor as if they were looking at a monster. Not only was the ancient mystic mirror unable to reflect the child's inner world, but it was also shattered into powder. That wasn't all, but the Daybreak sect disciple who wielded the ancient mystic mirror actually lost his life because of it. One had to admit that this was very terrifying, alright? Do you still want to sweep? When the soft voice drifted into everyone's ears, everyone shook their heads in unison like a rattledrum. Sweep your grandma? That person was already swept to death by you. Who would dare to sweep your inner world with such savagery? Only those who didn't want their lives would look. Then let's go. Arbor jumped onto the carriage and kicked out a pair of small shoes. He said in a soft and cute voice, Mom, my shoes are dirty. Okay. Mom will change a pair for you. Everyone watched as the carriage drove into the city, and collectively lost their ability to speak. Why did Daybreak sect's Li Xiang die? No one knew. Chapter 139. Thud, thud. Thud. The carriage drove into the city and headed toward Pear Blossom Alley. Xiao Zhongxing drove the carriage the entire way. Even now he was still a bit confused and couldn't figure out what had just happened. Actually, even Arbor himself didn't understand what had happened, let alone the rest of the Qiao family. Daybreak sect's Li Xiang had died mysteriously and strangely. Arbor couldn't figure it out no matter how much he thought about it. Xiao Zhongbang coughed twice and couldn't help but ask, Jojo, that youth just now was him? That youth fled and disappeared as soon as he entered the city, and everyone had seen his strength for themselves. Xiao Zhongbang was very clear about Shang Kuan's strength. When he left Daybreak sect, Shang Kuan was a level 4 mystic cultivator. After that, Shang Kuan advanced 2 levels in 15 years. For most people, this was a normal advancement speed. But for those with outstanding talent, it was absolutely tortoise-like speed. However, the disciples that Daybreak sect had accepted in recent years all seemed to have very mediocre aptitudes. It could be said that Xiao Zhongbang back then was considered one of the more outstanding ones among Daybreak sect's younger generation. Unfortunately, he was expelled from the sect in less than 2 years. Arbor withdrew his gaze from his father's face and casually replied, He will follow us. This youth's cultivation is extremely high and extraordinary. Why did he follow us? Xiao Zhongbang asked in puzzlement. Xiao Mu very naturally followed up. He paid the fee. Xiao Zhongbang was a bit dumbfounded. Was he stupid? Why did it feel like he was speaking to his eldest daughter in a completely different world? Xiao Hu hastily interjected and added, that big brother and Xiao Yao both paid a large sum of food and lodging fees and volunteered to follow eldest sister as her subordinates. Eldest uncle you don't know, but eldest sister is really too amazing. As Xiao Hu spoke, he revealed an expression of adoration. What do you mean? Xiao Zhongbang was so shocked that his jaw almost dropped to the ground. If they didn't pay the food and lodging fees? Then eldest sister will definitely not take them in. Xiao Hu looked at his uncle as if he was looking at a fool. How could his uncle not understand such simple logic? He was even less sensible than a child. What a joke. Xiao Zhongbang's mouth twitched. His nephew's expression made him want to slap him on the head. A great mystic cultivator whose strength far surpassed Shang Kuan's actually had to pay a fee to follow his daughter. How could others endure this? At this very moment, His Excellency Great Mystic Cultivator Ao Yi, who Qiao Zhongbang was talking about, was hiding behind a roof and stealthily taking out a palm-wide pure white jade talisman from his pocket. If Arbor was here, he would be able to tell that this jade talisman was carved on jade using the most authentic talisman technique. This was a communication jade talisman, which was rare even in Guanlan City. Yi took out a special jade brush and wrote a line of words on the jade talisman. Your Highness the Crown Prince, this is bad. A youth from the Daybreak sect has appeared and seems to be trying to steal your woman. After that, he wrote a bunch of random words. Something like the Daybreak sect youth insisted on giving Darling Chow a kiss, but Darling Chow sternly refused, and so on. He even deliberately described Darling Chow's stoic face. If Arbor saw what Ao Yi wrote, he would definitely be so angry that he would send him flying with a kick. After writing over 1,000 words, Ao Yi put away his brush as if he hadn't had enough. He looked up at the sky not far away and sighed with a hint of sadness. Your Highness, this subordinate can only help you up to this point. Where are you going to find a subordinate who is so conscientious in his duties? Chapter 140. Arbor didn't know that Ao Yi had secretly sent a message to the Crown Prince. She was currently trying to communicate with the sapling mentally. She felt that Li Xiang's death was very strange. It would be best if the sapling knew what happened. Qiu, do you know what happened just now? The sapling didn't make a sound for a long time. Arbor waited for a while, but seeing that it didn't move, she could only sigh slightly. She knew she couldn't count on this unreliable tree. The carriage sped into the city and entered the most bustling area of Shizhou City. This place seemed to be almost the same as before the zombie mutation. The streets were bustling with activity, and the peddlers who had set up stalls were energetically shouting to buy and sell. Pedestrians came and went like shuttles, and there was an endless stream of carriages. Wei Ziqin looked over, and a trace of joy appeared in her eyes. It seemed that her daughter was right. Coming to Shizhou City was the right choice. Look at these Shizhou City citizens living and working in peace and contentment. They even had the leisure to stroll around the streets as if they weren't affected by the zombie at all. Arbor wasn't as optimistic as her mother. Just now, Mr. Zhang had said that the center and east of the city were relatively affluent. Then what about the west, north, and south of the city? What kind of street scene was it? Especially the shed area in the west of the city, where the lower-class commoners from various villages and towns gathered. Would they really live carefree and happy lives? Arbor retracted her gaze and looked ahead indifferently. However, these weren't things she needed to consider. After bypassing the main street and following the address Mr. Zhang gave, Xiao Zhongxing drove the carriage into the entrance of Pear Blossom Alley. Sure enough, he felt a leisurely air blow against his face. Although this place was only half a street away from the main street, it was much quieter. Locust trees were planted on both sides of the street. The carriage shuttled through the shade of the trees, and they could see the city lord's mansion at the end of the street. After turning a corner, they entered the depths of the alley, and a quiet courtyard appeared in front of everyone. Xiao Zhongxing stopped the carriage and said happily, "Get off, we're here." This residence looked really good. Although it wasn't very big, it looked very exquisite. It was more than enough for their family to live in. The main thing was that it was quiet. There was only one residence in the depths of Pear Blossom Alley, so they didn't have to worry about being disturbed. Perhaps this was originally the mansion of the city lord. Arbor pondered. "Father, I like it here." Xiao Hu shouted happily. After running around for so long, Xiao Hu was overjoyed at the thought of being able to lie on a comfortable bed and sleep at night. "Let's go in and take a look." Everyone got out of the car happily. Xiao Zhongbang also carried the old lady and followed the group. Wei Ziqin held Xiao Lin'er's hand and walked up a few steps. Arbor took the lead to knock on the door. Soon the door opened, and a clean-cut old servant in cyan clothes walked out. He bowed toward Xiao Mu. "You are Miss Chow's family, right? Please enter quickly. This old servant has been waiting for everyone for a long time." "You are? Miss, you're too polite. I'm Chang Shuai, the housekeeper in charge of the courtyard." Arbor nodded. He had already confirmed in his heart that this courtyard seemed to have been the residence of the city lord. Housekeeper Chong, is there anyone else in this courtyard other than you? Arbor didn't like having too many people. Actually, according to her original intention, it was enough for her family to live comfortably. Chong Shui discreetly glanced at Arbor. Other than this old servant, there's also an old wet nurse who sweeps and a gardener. If Miss needs to purchase maidservants, this old servant can go to the dentist to pick a few suitable ones for Miss. No need. Arbor calmly interrupted him. Remember to make a Chow Estate signboard and hang it up as soon as possible. Wait, there will still be a fourth watch today. Chapter 141. Steward Chang's heart skipped a beat as he nodded repeatedly. With just a few words he could already tell that although the young lady in front of him was young, she seemed to be the most authoritative person in this group of people. Young lady, master, madam, this old servant will show you around the courtyard. Steward Chong respectfully led them in. Once they entered, they saw a small flower bed. The entire garden was overflowing with greenery. It was really well taken care of, and a delicate fragrance assailed their nostrils. Wei Ziqin fell in love with this house at first glance. A middle-aged gardener stood by the flower bed, rubbing his hands uneasily as he stepped forward to greet them. Masters, this is the gardener, Old Bai. He is clumsy with words and doesn't know how to speak, but when it comes to taking care of flowers and plants, his skills are top-notch. Chong Zai hurriedly put in a few good words for the gardener. He could tell just now that this young lady didn't seem to have any intention of keeping a servant. It's really very good. Old Bai, do you take care of this courtyard alone? Wei Ziqin smiled. These flowers and plants are really well taken care of. Seeing that his mother was happy, Arbor turned to Chong Zai and said, he can stay. Chong Zai was overjoyed and hurriedly gave Old Bai a look. The middle-aged man hurriedly bowed. Thank you, young lady. On the other hand, Xiao Zhongxing and the rest were slightly stunned and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. So their family's cold-faced baby originally wanted to chase these servants away. Needless to say, if you asked her, she would definitely answer, it's not much use to waste food, so why keep it? Darling Xiao was already being very kind by not making them pay for food and lodging. Xiao Yao secretly wiped her tears as she followed behind. Her heart was bitter. She thought back to how hard it was for her and Aoyi to follow the young master back then. Chong Zai led everyone through the long corridor and introduced, there are 6 rooms here. How do you plan to distribute them, master? Xiao Zhongbang really wasn't used to the old servant calling him master. He smiled awkwardly and rubbed his nose. Jojo, you distribute them. Other than these 6 rooms, is there anything else behind? Arbor asked. There's a small arched door at the back of the court, which leads to a small garden. There is a small 2-story attic inside. And there are 4 rooms for living. Arbor nodded and turned to Xiao Zhongxing. Second uncle, you and the old lady can stay here. I'm going to stay in the attic with my parents. Xiao Yao automatically stood beside Arbor. You live downstairs. Arbor glanced at Xiao Yao. Xiao Yao only felt that Mrs. Voice was heavenly. She was actually prepared to sleep on the haystack or in the garden. I have my own room now. Xiao Hu happily ran towards one of the rooms. Arbor turned his head and looked at Chong Zai. Where's that old wet nurse? She called her over. In the future, she would let her take care of the old lady after cleaning. You don't have to go through so much trouble. Just serve him 3 meals a day. Miss, you're really not particular about this. The corner of Chong Zai's mouth secretly twitched. Which rich family would call a rough old woman to take care of the old madam? Miss, you're the only one. Arbor glanced at Chong Zai and vigorously waved her small hand. Our small family isn't particular about this. It's fine as long as things are done well. Soon that old wet nurse named Sun Yang arrived in front of the Chow family. Before she could say more than 3 sentences, Arbor waved her hand and had Sun Yang carry the old lady back to her room. Arbor's family settled down in Shizhou City for the time being. As for the crown prince, he had been very leisurely these past 2 days. The martial law in Guanlan City didn't have much to do with him. This lord had locked himself in a secret room in the Eastern Palace and disappeared for more than a day. His subordinates didn't care, but the old king of the Mo kingdom was so anxious that he had blisters on his mouth. Chapter 142. A group of old officials accompanied the old king of Mo Kingdom, frowning. His Highness the Crown Prince was slacking in his work. It was really worrying. This matter had to be traced back to the day the Crown Prince returned to the capital. Consort Zheng's palace had a palace-made corpse causing a ruckus. The Crown Prince sent people to suppress it. This matter was originally quite good, and it could be considered a successful solution to Consort Zheng's problem. However, this matter wasn't over. Noble Consort Zheng wept as she ran to old Wang to complain tearfully. She said that the people sent by the Crown Prince were very rude and unreasonable. After taking care of that monster, they even wantonly searched her entire palace from top to bottom, and smashed many of her good things. Blah blah blah. She dragged old Wang to ask the Crown Prince for compensation. When the Crown Prince went to old Wang's study to report about the corpse puppet, old Wang coldly reprimanded the Crown Prince, saying that he didn't respect his concubine mother and had no respect for anyone. Great, this was like poking a hornet's nest. This Crown Prince, who appeared to be gentle and cultured on the surface, was actually a straightforward person. Not only did he rebuke old Wang, he even left in a huff and went into seclusion, never to see anyone again. That night, Consort Zheng's Sephora Flower Palace was met with a disaster of destruction and looting. Although there were no clues pointing to the Crown Prince's doing, everyone, including old Wang, was well aware of the truth. Old Wang was furious, but this was his son's fault, so he had to take the blame. He had such an outstanding son. Although he dissed him from time to time, he knew that among all his sons, only the Crown Prince could do great things and inherit the Mo Kingdom's throne. Old Wang couldn't bear to touch the Crown Prince, so he could only pinch his nose and accept this matter. Later, he even complained to Consort Zheng about it, but could only appease her. Fortunately, before the Crown Prince went into seclusion, he had already given the order for the entire city to be under martial law. Dragon Saliva Guard Captain Wuxia had led people to search the entire city. However, in the palace, it was a long story. The Crown Prince didn't say that he would be responsible for the safety of the entire palace, so the Dragon Saliva Guard only stayed near the east and central palaces. Just the 3,000 men under the Imperial Army commander was not enough. Wasn't it just a matter of time? There was trouble here in the morning, and there was trouble in the afternoon. Imperial Guard Commander Hui Feng felt very tired. He was running around the palace with a group of Imperial Guards. He really wanted to cry. During the morning court session, a minister of the Great King's faction jumped out to criticize the Crown Prince's inaction and joined several other ministers to impeach the Crown Prince. The officials of the Eastern Palace Party almost got into a fight with the Great King's party. Their faces and ears turned red as they argued with each other in the throne room. Lao Wang was so angry that he almost vomited blood. After flinging his sleeves and ending court, Lao Wang hugged the beautiful Consort Zheng and wanted to take a walk in the Imperial Garden with the beauty to relieve his boredom. However, a zombie suddenly jumped out of the pond and hugged Consort Zheng tightly. It grabbed Consort Zheng's neck and roared, almost scaring Lao Wang to death. This was a very serious matter. After Lao Wang witnessed the viciousness of zombies, he finally understood the dangers of zombies. He wanted to discuss this matter with his son, but his son was in seclusion, so he anxiously gathered the other ministers to think of a solution. This is all Consort Zheng's fault. If not for Consort Zheng creating trouble out of nothing and angering the Crown Prince so much that he went into seclusion, how would things have ended up like this? Not many people dared to say this. The person who said this was Queen Zhao's younger brother, the Marquis of Stability, Zhao Shang. Lao Wang wanted to retort, but when faced with his brother-in-law's righteous face, he couldn't say anything. Zhao Shang said righteously, "In my humble opinion, we should drag Consort Zheng out and flog her 30 times to bring justice to the Crown Prince." Everyone was silent. The Marquis of Stability really dared to say anything. Lao Wang's face turned green. Chapter 143. The Marquis of Jiajing was one of old Wang's people, and was usually there to smooth things over. When he saw old Wang's look, he quickly stepped forward to stop the Marquis of Stability. "Marquis Zhao, you can't say that. Consort Zheng was also scared out of her wits today and is still sick. She deserves it." It would have been better if he hadn't said anything, but the moment he did, Zhao Shang was furious. Everyone knows that zombies are everywhere now, and no place is safe. Yet she still wants to stroll around the garden with the great king? Whenever she can't stroll, she has to stroll around during these chaotic days. If not for her, would His Majesty be scared? Would His Majesty's face be damaged? Her heart is simply terrible. Zhao Shang cupped his hands towards the great king as he spoke and signaled for everyone to look at the little blisters by the great king's mouth. He didn't give Consort any face. The great king was furious. He was angered by his unfilial son. Everyone knew that the Marquis of Stability spoke without holding back. Back then, Old Wang had even praised this official for being upright and outspoken and daring to admonish. He even wrote a plaque saying loyalty and righteousness for him. But now he really wanted to slap him to death. The other officials were silent. How would they dare to interrupt when the queen's younger brother was angrily berating Consort Sheng? They all lowered their heads and pretended to be dead, which made Old Wang even angrier. All of you, continue to invite the crown prince out of seclusion. Old Wang flung his sleeves and left angrily. Until the crown prince comes out. If the crown prince doesn't come out, all of you can stay here. None of you can go back. The ministers looked at each other with bitter expressions on their faces. What the hell? What is this called? This is called when the king of hell fights, the little ghosts suffer. The king himself couldn't bring himself to do it, so he had to force this group of miserable officials to do it. How sullen was that? The most tiring thing was that the crown prince's black-hearted heart was unparalleled. They had been in the Eastern Palace for so long, but he didn't even provide them with a cup of tea. The little palace maids and eunuchs coming in and out of the palace all greeted the officials politely. Then they went back to doing their own things and looked straight ahead, completely ignoring this group of miserable people. Marquis of Stability. An official looked bitterly at Zhao Shang. The latter waved his hand and snorted coldly. You reap what you sow. This marquis still has to go to the central palace to pay respects to Her Highness. You guys stay here and continue to invite the crown prince out of seclusion. As soon as he finished speaking, he flicked his sleeves and left as well, leaving the group of bitter fellows looking at each other in dismay. All of them were actually speechless. Marquis of Stability, your preemptive strike is too fake. While all the officials were sitting outside with bitter faces and frowning, the crown prince was hiding in a secret room in his bedchamber. He leaned against the window and leaned on the soft brocade couch, flipping through the book in his hand. A small bronze cauldron that was half the length of an arm was suspended in the air. The bottom of the cauldron was wrapped in a circle of red flames. The cauldron lid was pushed up by the airflow from time to time, making clattering sounds. The youth with sword-like eyebrows and bright eyes, Huifeng, was standing next to the crown prince, silently staring at the bronze cauldron. It wasn't until the door to the secret room was pushed open with a whoosh that Huifeng withdrew his gaze and glanced at the door. The person who entered was a vigorous youth in black. A reddish-brown nether spring flower was embroidered on his chest, and the flower's shape was a bit ostentatious. Drink it. The crown prince didn't even look up as he flicked his finger over another page. The eyes of the youth who entered brightened slightly, and he quickly moved to the table and drained the tea in one gulp. Huifeng glanced at him and pursed his lips. How is it? The crown prince's question was a bit out of the blue, but the youth immediately understood and ran up with a grin. Chapter 144. Don't worry, Your Highness. This subordinate has already secretly led people to search every nook and cranny inside and outside the palace. There won't be any more zombies hiding there. The crown prince responded indifferently. With a flick of his sleeve, a streak of fire immediately shot into the bronze cauldron, immediately suppressing something that was struggling to break free. The cauldron continued to emit thumping sounds, but the crown prince didn't even look at it. In reality, when the crown prince ordered Wuxia to search the city, he also ordered Hidden Flower to search the palace for hidden dangers. Even if it was for Queen Zhao's sake, the crown prince wouldn't truly stand by and do nothing. Has Hidden Current returned? The crown prince put down the book in his hand and looked up at the captain of the hidden pavilion, Hidden Flower, who had a nether spring flower embroidered on his chest. He's waiting outside. Hidden Flower's mouth twitched silently. Cough, how about having him wash up first before coming to see you? No need. Come in, the crown prince said indifferently, and the door to the secret room opened. A corpse puppet with long dried-up hair suddenly bounced in. As it bounced, the rotten flesh hanging from its body fell to the ground with a pitter-patter, provoking Huifeng's extremely disdainful gaze. "My lord!" The zombie youth reached out to brush away the dried-up hair draped over his face and revealed a mouthful of ghastly white teeth, as he flashed a creepy smile at the crown prince. Even the crown prince, who was as calm as this, couldn't help but avert his gaze. "Your makeup is so ugly. My lord, I've been running for an entire day. Those Imperial Palace guards chased after me, so it's very tragic. My makeup was actually pretty good before, but after being tossed around in water and fire, even the most perfect makeup would become unbearable to look at." Hidden Flower glared at the young corpse puppet as he tried to defend himself. He shrank back in fright when Hidden Flower glared at him. "Go wash up before coming back." Hidden Flower shouted at his Hidden Pavilion member. Hidden Current pursed his lips and ran out dejectedly. The Crown Prince extended a clean and slender hand, and Huifeng immediately understood and handed him a cup of tea. "Let Consort lie in bed for a while longer. It will also allow Imperial Mother to have some peace and quiet." With a single sentence from this uncle, Consort was doomed to be miserable for at least the next month. Consort had been causing too much trouble recently. If it weren't for that, he wouldn't have bothered to deal with her. "You're just a little favored concubine. You don't even have the appearance of a favored concubine. It's one thing for you to strut around in the imperial harem, but you still dare to make a fuss in front of him. It's simply inexplicable and unbearable." The Crown Prince knew very well what kind of character his father was. He was easily swayed and usually did not have much of an opinion. Not only was he fond of beauties, he was also muddle-headed and did not understand the situation all day long. With such a father, the Crown Prince expressed his helplessness. In order to make his father pay attention to the matter of zombies, the Crown Prince had found someone to arrange such a big show in the Imperial Garden. One could only imagine how amazing the drama would be when Undercurrent, who was disguised as a zombie, suddenly jumped out of the garden pool and grabbed Consort, trying to strangle her to death. A son who worried himself to death for his father sighed and put down the teacup in his hand. Suddenly, the Crown Prince's brows twitched, and he took out a jade communication talisman from his pocket. With a light swipe of his finger, lines of small characters quickly and clearly appeared. Hidden Flower and Huifeng stood next to the Crown Prince without batting an eyelid, and their gazes both drifted towards the jade talisman. Chapter 145. There were many words written on the jade talisman, but the Crown Prince's gaze was fixed on the small line. A youth from Daybreak Sect strongly requested to give Miss Chow a kiss, but Miss Chow sternly refused and rolled her eyes at him. These words sounded funny no matter how one looked at it, but the two couldn't laugh. Looking at the Crown Prince's expressionless face, Hidden Flower and Huifeng both felt that a storm was about to come. A youth from Daybreak Sect? The Crown Prince indifferently read this line of words with an incomparably gentle voice and an unchanging expression. However, Hidden Flower and Huifeng, who were standing next to him, couldn't help but tremble. Bang! The cup in the Crown Prince's hand instantly turned into powder. Ugh, the Crown Prince is so scary. Please don't take out your anger on him. For his own safety, Hidden Flower hurriedly stepped forward and slandered, "Your Highness, according to this subordinate's knowledge, Daybreak Sect also has a stronghold in Guanlan City. How about this subordinate immediately bring people to flatten this stronghold? How about it? Slandering a subject?" Huifeng disdainfully swept him a glance and then nodded. "Your Highness, Hidden Flower's suggestion is quite good. How about we do it this way? Let this subordinate bring people and flatten Daybreak Sect's stronghold in the royal capital." Hidden Flower. What the fuck was with your disdainful gaze just now? The Crown Prince glanced at the two of them in silence. After a while, he slowly said, "If this Crown Prince personally goes to Shijiao City to patrol, Your Highness, you mustn't." Hidden Flower's expression changed, and he wished for nothing more than to hug the Crown Prince's thigh. "You've only returned to the royal capital for less than 2 days. You absolutely can't go out now." Right. Her Majesty the Queen also won't agree to Your Highness leaving the capital to see the little girl at such a dangerous time. The Crown Prince narrowed his eyes and raised his cold eyebrows. "Patrol? Huifeng really wanted to cry. Sir, didn't you just come back from your patrol? Your Highness, how about this subordinate leave the capital to patrol the various cities and see the extent of the zombie's transformation? Hidden Flower volunteered. I can also help your Highness give the little girl a gift on the way. Huifeng sneered. What kind of path did you follow that led you all the way to Shizhou City? Then, all right. The Crown Prince nodded reluctantly and looked up at the bronze cauldron. It'll take at least 2 days to form. Go prepare it. That child has a hobby of collecting. Do as you see fit. Hidden Flower. So this subordinate still has to go shopping in the royal capital? The Crown Prince put away the communication jade talisman, stood up and walked out of the secret chamber. Shizhou City didn't seem to be very safe either. Just now, he had received the little girl's signal of danger and immediately sensed that the wisp of soul remembrance attached to the pharaoh was acting strangely. No one knew that the Emo Kingdom's crown prince was a rarely seen profound artifact master. The feral ink had come from his hands. When the mystic weapon took shape, Emo Lien had used his essence blood to inject a soul remembrance clone into it. Hence, when Li Xiang, that guy, fantasized about using the ancient mystic mirror to tear apart Xiaomu's conscious, he was immediately sent flying by the terrifying soul energy emitted by Emo Lien's soul remembrance clone. Huifeng to Huifeng? Huifeng. Huifeng Yu, the crown prince sighed and stepped out of the secret chamber. In fact, the best way was to bring the little girl's family to the royal city to settle down. However, looking at the little girl's unapproachable appearance, he was afraid that she would hate him if he used any means. Therefore, he could only let nature take its course. Chapter 146. When his personal eunuch saw the crown prince come out of the inner room, his eyes lit up. He immediately ran over and asked, "Your Highness, is it time to see the officials?" Those officials were so miserable. They had been waiting since the afternoon. Seeing that it was already past mealtime, His Highness the Crown Prince willfully left them hanging outside the door. The Crown Prince swept a glance at that eunuch. "Do you think this Crown Prince is such an easygoing person? You don't look like one at all." After that, without waiting for any further instructions from the Great Master, he rushed out of the door. The little eunuch put on a cold expression and said to the crowd of officials who surrounded him, "My lords, His Highness the Crown Prince has gone to bed." Clang! The hearts of all the ministers were broken to the ground. They had been waiting from dawn to dusk, thinking that the great Crown Prince would kindly come out to see them. However, he didn't. So their hopes that the Crown Prince's black heart would be a little whiter were impossible. "Marquis of Jiajing what do you think we should do? Should we wait or not?" If he had known, he would have followed the Marquis of Stability's example and left early. That way he wouldn't have been a fool here for an entire day. The Marquis of Jiajing was furious. "What do you think? The great king wants us to wait here. Do you dare to not wait? Wait. As long as His Highness the Crown Prince doesn't see us, we will wait here for a day." Even if they had to wait for grass to grow and mushrooms to grow, they still had to wait. An official said with tears streaming down his face. If crying could soften the Crown Prince's heart, they really wanted to turn their tears into a long river. They didn't know if there was anyone in this world who could make His Highness the Crown Prince let go of all his arrogance and willfulness. They guessed that it was impossible. Achoo! Our dear Xiaomu rubbed her small nose and sat on the edge of the soft bed, swinging her short legs. "Jojo, can you sleep alone?" Arbor looked gloomily at his mother and nodded repeatedly to show that he could do it. "All right then. Mother will come to see you later." Wei Ziqin pinched her daughter's little face and reached out to carry the noisy little bun Jolin. She got up and walked out the door. "Mother, please don't come." She wasn't a real baby who needed her mother to tuck in her blanket in the middle of the night. Arbor rolled onto the bed and buried himself in the quilt. Smelling the fragrance of the quilt, he took a deep breath. He could finally have a good night's sleep. At this moment, Shizhou City's city gates were already closed. A horse-drawn carriage quickly rushed to the tightly shut city gate. A person jumped down from the carriage, ignoring the surrounding commoners who were sleeping in the open. He directly rushed to the city gate and slammed the gate, shouting, "Open the gate! Open the door! Open the door! Didn't you see Second Elder Lu returning to the city? Open the door!" The two body cultivators guarding the city lowered their heads to take a look. Through the light from the torches they said indifferently, "The city lord has ordered for the city gates to be closed before nightfall. The city gates can only be opened the next morning." "You two blind dogs. Who is second young Master Lu?" One of the Lu family guards who slammed the gate scolded angrily. "This is the Lu estate's second young master. How dare you treat him like this? Quickly open the city gates." The two body cultivators coldly glanced at the guards and went down the city gate tower. They didn't care about the Lu estate guards' curses. "Second young master, we can't go in?" A soft voice came from the carriage. Chapter 147. A young master in luxurious brocade clothes walked out of the carriage and waved a folding fan in his hand, looking like a dandy. After getting out of the carriage, he kicked the guard and cursed, "What's going on? What's going on? You can't even handle such a small matter. What's the use of having people like you?" The Lu estate's guard said bitterly, "Young master, they said the city lord's estate gave a strict order to not open the city gates at night." "Preposterous." The young master in luxurious brocade clothes pointed at the city gate tower with his fan and berated angrily, "Don't you know who this young master is? Hurry up and open the city gates. You bunch of trash. If they don't open the gates, can't you think of a way? Go. Smash the city gates. This young master wants to go in right now." A corner of the carriage's curtain was lifted, revealing a gentle and fair face that was as pure as a lotus flower. That woman softly called out, "Young Master Lu." The young man in luxurious clothes immediately changed into a drooling pig face and walked toward the carriage with a grin. "Little sister Xiaowan, don't worry. We'll be able to enter the city immediately." When Rowan nodded with a smile and lowered her head shyly from the young master's gaze. The young man in luxurious clothes' heart wavered, but he could not do anything else under everyone's gaze, so he helplessly gave up. He turned around and kicked the manservant again. "Why aren't you smashing the city gates? This bunch of daring dogs. When Uncle comes, I'll teach them a lesson." They actually dared to humiliate him, second young Master Lu, in front of a beauty. This was simply preposterous. When Rowan put down the curtain in her hand, and a trace of mockery flitted through her eyes. What a brainless guy. If it were not for the fact that she was powerless and had a difficult journey, she would not have accompanied this dandy young master and hitched a ride in his carriage to Shizhou City. A few ferocious manservants took out a few sticks from the carriage and really followed this hedonistic young master to smash the city gate. There were many commoners gathered at the city gates. They had all lined up overnight and were waiting to enter the city early the next day. When they saw this noble young master's exaggerated actions, they were all dumbstruck and did not know what to say. Bang bang bang. The city gates were violently smashed by the clubs, producing loud bangs. The commoners subconsciously gathered to the sides and pointed at the young master while muttering softly, "Smash! Smash it! Use all your strength! Did you not eat?" The young master kicked a certain manservant's butt and shouted angrily, "If the city gate is destroyed, this young master will take responsibility until the end." At this time a farmer drove a lazy donkey cart over, shouting all the way. The procession at the city gate had automatically dispersed to the two sides. The lazy donkey cart had a smooth journey and slowly followed behind the carriage. There were about a dozen people sitting on the donkey cart, men and women of all ages, young and old. They wished they could sit on top of each other. The donkey cart was slow to begin with, and with so many people in tow, one could imagine how difficult the journey was. That was how Qiao Wenwan had come all the way here. At this moment, she was sitting sideways on the lap of a dark-skinned and simple-looking young man. The young man looked honest, but his hands were not honest. They were casually placed on Qiao Wenjuan's small waist and stroked it from time to time. There was limited space on the donkey cart. Basically, all the men and women were squeezed together. Even if Qiao Wenwan had a belly full of anger, she had nowhere to vent it. Unless she jumped out of the car, she would have to endure it. Chapter 148. The young man hugging Qiao Wenwan was none other than her husband, 3rd Junior Wei, who was going to be married in September. The Wei family village was not far from Quoto village, and there was only the Fong family village between them. The Wei family village was much more prosperous than Quoto village. Elderly Lady Wei was very satisfied when she arranged this marriage for Qiao Wenwan. However, Qiao Wenwan herself was not satisfied. She felt that the Wei family had 3 sons, and she was only marrying the youngest son. After marrying him, not only would she have to listen to her grandmother's nagging, but she might also be bullied by her 2 sisters-in-law. The Wei family's old lady, Madame Niu, was shrewd and difficult to get along with. She was always the one scheming against others, and no one could scheme against her. Ever since she married her 2 daughters-in-law, they had been obediently held in her hands. How could Qiao Wenwan be satisfied with such a family? She had always been a proud person. What she wanted the most was to marry into the city and become a wealthy and respectable young madam. Unfortunately, her fate was full of misfortune. After being heartlessly abandoned by her family, she encountered this outrageous family while fleeing. The Wei family's old lady, Madame Niu, made the decision the night she met Qiao Wenwan. She made the young couple bow to heaven and earth and get married. She bluntly said that she would only flee to Shizhou City with Qiao Wenwan if she became a member of the Wei family. That night, without any cover, the impatient 3rd Junior Wei and Qiao Wenwan entered the bridal chamber in advance. Qiao Wenwan mourned her tragic fate along the way. She combed her hair and followed the Wei family to Shizhou City with a numb expression. The Wei family jumped off the donkey cart and noisily ran toward the city gate. At this time, the ruckus caused by the young master of the Lu estate smashing the city gate became more and more intense. The city gate guards had already rushed to the city lord's estate to report. The 2 body cultivators appeared on the city gate tower again and looked down coldly. Don't blame us for being impolite if the people below continue to wantonly destroy the city gate. Young Master Lu. When Rowan lifted the curtain and called out softly, this young Master Lu was too reckless. When Rowan could not help but frown. She wanted to enter the city, not cause trouble. She did not know how to deal with the situation. Little sister Xiaowan, don't worry. The city gates will open soon, the well-dressed young man said with a smile. As soon as he finished speaking, a row of city guards rushed up to the top of the gate tower. They were all holding bows and arrows and were ready for battle. They aimed at the guards of the Lu residence below. What are you doing? Young Master Lu's voice changed from fright. She really didn't expect that after going out for a few days for sightseeing, not only would she be stopped at the door when she returned home, she would also be shot at with arrows. Where did these people get the guts from? When Qiao Wenwan walked up and immediately saw the slender woman sitting inside the carriage. When Rowan looked up and met her gaze, she sized up the woman in ragged clothes with a woman's hairstyle, and her lips involuntarily curled into a secret smile. Hey, it's Cousin Wenwan. How come you've become like this after not seeing you for so long? When Rowan ignored Qiao Wenjuan's ashen face and covered her mouth with her small fair hand, she pretended to cry out, Cousin Wenwan, why are you dressed as a woman? I remember you got married in September. At this time, Arbor woke up from his sleep and abruptly opened his eyes. His cold eyes looked straight at the muslin canopy above his head. He sat up and listened carefully. He saw a hubbub of voices coming from the city lord's estate, which was only half a street away. It seemed that the city lord had ordered people to leave the estate overnight. Chapter 149. Arbor blinked her pitch-black eyes and sat alone in the darkness for a long while, until the bustling sounds of the city lord's mansion faded away. She lay down and closed her eyes for a while, but she couldn't fall asleep no matter what. Arbor simply got up and lit the lamp. Facing the candle flame, she took out a blank talisman paper and started to draw talismans. She didn't have time to draw talismans when she received 300 blank talisman papers from the store. Now that she couldn't fall asleep, she got up to find something to do. With the talisman brush in hand, Arbor spread open the blank talisman paper and smoothly drew talismans on it. Her main goal was to draw some storage talismans, so that she wouldn't have to worry about storing things in the future. Unexpectedly, the first storage talisman she drew was a fine blue talisman. Arbor was stunned. Her brush paused slightly. Then she started to draw talismans one by one. However, the talismans she drew this time were all fine blue talismans. What did this mean? Arbor was astonished. She tried to draw a strength talisman or a speed talisman. In the end, She discovered that the elementary talismans she drew were all fine blue talismans. She then tried to draw a few useless safety talismans, calming talismans, dizziness talismans, and immobilization talismans. Afterwards, she confirmed that the elementary talismans she drew were all upgraded to fine blue talismans. Arbor stopped writing. Her mystic sense entered her conscious and flipped through a jade slip from the golden talisman jade tome. She read the sentence again. The path of a talisman master is filled with unimaginable hardships and dangers. Talisman masters had to train for at least 3 years before they could draw a few blue talismans. The success rate of a blue talisman was only 1/10 of a yellow talisman. Therefore, wasn't her success rate of a fine blue talisman a bit strange? The total number of talismans she drew didn't exceed 100, right? Her success rate of a blue talisman was already 100%? She felt that her success rate was very interesting. If other talisman masters knew about it, she wondered what they would think. When she left her conscious, 2 demonstration talismans floated out of the golden talisman jade tome. Arbor silently reached out to take them and examine them. Elementary talisman, drowsy talisman. Falls asleep for 15 minutes. Opponents 1 level higher than the user will be immune to the effect. Elementary talisman, summoning talisman. Randomly summons a natural animal or plant. Effect 1 day. The level of the summoning must not exceed the user's profound strength by more than 3 levels. Xiaomu first set these 2 talismans to the side and continued to silently draw her storage talisman. One could never have too many storage talismans. In the future, when everyone went out to gather supplies, they would rely on these storage talismans. When the time came, she would equip everyone in the team with some storage talismans, so they wouldn't have to worry about not being able to collect things wherever they went. The little girl who was happily drawing the storage talisman didn't realize that the speed at which she drew the storage talisman was getting faster and faster. Originally, it took her 15 minutes to draw a storage talisman, but now she could draw one in minutes. It wasn't until there was a pile of blue storage talismans in his hand that Arbor woke up. Oh my god! I've already drawn over 200 blue storage talismans. Looking up at the sky, the east was already starting to brighten. Arbor exhaled and stored the 100 blank talismans into one of the blue storage talismans. Looking at the remaining 7 blank talismans on the table, Arbor carefully and slowly drew the last storage talisman. The moment she put the brush away, her mind slightly stirred. A strand of purple light suddenly appeared on the talisman, almost blinding her eyes in an instant. A peerless purple talisman. Arbor's pink and tender little face revealed a slight smile. This smile was much more natural than any of her previous fake smiles. This was a genuine smile that came from the bottom of her heart. There was no facial paralysis, no stupefaction. In this instant, this little wooden doll seemed to have been lit up. Even her life came alive. Chapter 150. She placed the 200 over blue storage talismans she had drawn into this supreme-grade purple talisman. Arbor stretched out 2 fingers and gently stroked the talisman. A purple light flashed, and 4 cubic meters of storage space appeared in front of her. The power of a supreme-grade purple talisman was 4 times that of a yellow talisman. This supreme-grade purple storage talisman had 4 cubic meters of storage space. It could be accessed 400 times each. It was definitely worth it. Arbor held it in her hands and looked at it for a long time. Only then did she put this supreme-grade purple talisman into her waist bag. There were only 6 blank talismans on the table. Arbor took the 2 newly drawn talismans and started to draw them. She first drew a sleeping talisman, but it ended in failure. The second time, a blue light flashed, and she drew an elementary blue sleeping talisman. The power of a blue talisman was twice that of a yellow talisman. When used on a talisman, it could double the time. This blue sleeping talisman could make people sleep for 30 minutes. Arbor held the talisman pen and thought about the remaining 4 blank talismans. She gave up on drawing the sleeping talisman and started to draw the summoning talisman. Looking at the description of this talisman, it seemed to be quite powerful. It could randomly summon all the animals and plants in the natural world. This range was huge. It could be ordinary animals and plants, or it could be mystic beasts and evil plants. Anything was possible. Arbor took a deep breath and drew the talisman. This summoning talisman was probably beyond the norm among elementary talismans. It was abnormally difficult to draw. One wrong stroke and the entire talisman would be scrapped. Even with Xiao Mu's super smooth talisman drawing skills, she was somewhat at a loss after failing 3 times in a row. The sun rose outside the window, and the sound of her parents waking up and walking around could be heard. Arbor stared at the last blank talisman on the table. Holding the talisman pen, she calmed herself down and drew again. All the sounds outside the window were isolated by her 5 senses in an instant. There was no sound at all. Arbor was completely immersed in the world of talismans. She concentrated on drawing the elementary summoning talisman. At this very moment, Xiao Mu was completely engrossed in it, and did not notice that the door to her room had been pushed open. Wei Ziqin was holding her youngest daughter, Xiao Lin, as she stood dazedly by the door, gazing at her eldest daughter, who was enveloped in a layer of multicolored light. Is Jojo awake? Xiao Zhongbang, who had a good night's sleep and was full of energy, walked to his wife with a smile. When his eyes fell on his daughter at the table, he was also stunned. His daughter. What's on the table is a talisman paper, right? Her daughter was holding a talisman brush and drawing talismans with a serious expression on her face. This situation was somewhat inconceivable. Xiao Zhongbang had never known that his daughter was actually a talisman master. The moment he put away the brush, the entire talisman paper emitted a faint blue light. Xiao Mu heaved a long sigh of relief, and her taut nerves finally relaxed slightly. This time, the summoning talisman was finally drawn successfully. Her lips curled into a smile again, which fell into the eyes of the family of 3 standing by the door. Xiao Lin cried out happily, "Sister, you're beautiful. Sister, it's time to eat. Sister is awesome." Although she did not know what praiseworthy thing her sister had done, Xiao Lin cried out without any integrity when she saw her parents' shocked expressions. Arbor was stunned. She turned to look at the door. The warm morning sun shone on her family, making her feel a little warmer. "Father, Mother, good morning." Arbor smiled. Chapter 151. Sister. It's time for dinner. Xiao Lin stretched out her little paws and giggled at her sister enthusiastically. Wei Ziqin stuffed the little foodie into Xiao Zhongbang's arms and walked quickly to Arbor's side. She looked at the talismans in Arbor's hands in shock. "Jojo, this is? The 2 storage talismans you gave me last time were? Was it you?" "I drew them." Arbor nodded. She didn't intend to keep it a secret from them. Since they happened to see it, she might as well tell them about the talismans. That way, her mother wouldn't treat the 2 storage talismans like treasures, counting the number of times she could use them and not daring to store them. Wei Ziqin's face was full of disbelief. The 2 storage talismans that Jojo had given her were a gift from the expert who had saved her. One had a large space and one had a small space. One could store 100 times, the other could store 200 times. It was filled with all kinds of utensils, food, clothes, and so on that she had tidied up the house. She couldn't bear to use them. But now Jojo was saying that she had drawn the storage talismans. Arbor rubbed her little nose and looked at her mother a little embarrassedly. She had casually told a lie that the storage talismans were a gift from the Crown Prince. Now she was exposed. Ahem. "Mom, these storage talismans are actually quite easy to draw. Look." She took out a purple talisman from her waist and took out 30 blue storage talismans. These can store 200 times and have 2 cubic meters of space. Arbor's mother was dumbfounded. Her father was also petrified. "Jojo, did you draw these storage talismans the whole night?" Xiao Zhongbang snapped out of his daze and immediately put on a solemn expression as he looked at his daughter. "Although it's indeed very impressive that you can draw 30 storage talismans in one night, you're still young after all and still growing. Don't be so impatient in the future. You need to rest and sleep, okay?" Arbor. "Actually, I drew more than 200 talismans in one night." She didn't dare to say this to her father. She just nodded her head in agreement. Xiao Zhongbang had seen storage talismans in his sect before, which was a treasure comparable to a mystic cultivator's inner world. Thus, his knowledge was much higher than Wei Ziqin's, and he knew that this type of storage talisman was very rare. Moreover, Xiao Zhongbang was extremely clearly aware that talisman techniques had been passed down from generation to generation since the ancient times until now, and many talisman techniques had been drowned in the torrent of history, and had been lost for a long time. For example, not everyone knew how to draw storage talismans. It was unknown whether there were any talisman patrician families in Guanlan City who knew how to draw storage talismans. In any case, he only knew that a storage talisman was a highly sought-after item, whether it was placed in an auction or in the black market. However, at this moment, when his daughter acted like a nouveau riche and his wife, giving each of them 10 talismans, Xiao Zhongbang's hand holding the storage talisman trembled slightly, and his eyes were filled with an expression that said, "Am I dreaming? These 10 talismans are for second uncle." Arbor stuffed another 10 blue talismans into his father's hands. He then picked up the blue and yellow summoning talismans and looked at them. Finally, he put away the blue talisman and planned to open a yellow talisman. "Jojo, what's this?" Xiao Zhongbang's agitated emotions calmed down slightly. His gaze was fixed on the yellow summoning talisman in Arbor's hand. This beginner-level yellow summoning talisman was the demonstration talisman that had just fallen out of the golden talisman jade tome. Arbor thought for a moment before taking the yellow talisman and walking out of the building. He said as he walked, "This is a summoning talisman." Chapter 152. She might summon a large animal like a jackal, wolf, tiger, or leopard later. When Xiaomu walked downstairs, she bumped into the girl Xiaoyao, who approached her with a grin. "Master, madam, little master, breakfast is ready." The little foodie lay in her father's arms, and her eyes lit up when she heard that. "Big sister, breakfast." Arbor paused and turned back to say to Xiaoyao, "You guys go ahead first. I'll come to the parlor to eat later." No. Xiao Zhongbang shook his head. "It's rare to see a legendary summoning talisman. How can father not stay and take a look?" Wei Ziqin also expressed her willingness to watch. Xiaoyao, on the other hand, was a little dumbfounded. She looked at her little master and asked in astonishment, "Summoning talisman? Was there something wrong with her ears? Why did she hear master mention a summoning talisman?" From what she knew, this talisman was a talisman patrician family in Guanlan City that had been treasured for generations and was on the verge of extinction. The entire patrician family only had one summoning talisman, and it was worshipped in the ancestral hall all day long like a divine object. "All right then." Arbor nodded. "Father, mother, don't be nervous. The summoned animals and plants should listen to orders." Actually, she didn't have any confidence when she said that. She had never summoned any animals or plants from beginning to end. So who knew what the hell she would summon? What if it was a ferocious beast? She didn't want to scare Shaolin-er into crying with her loud voice. "Cough, father, mother. Carry Shaolin-er and walk further away." Arbor held the yellow talisman and reminded them. Wei Ziqin thought that there might be danger, so she nodded and pulled Xiao Zhongbang back with her. She even exhorted, "Jojo, be careful. Run if you see something wrong." Arbor looked down at the yellow summoning talisman in her hand. These talismans were all made by her, and the talisman energy contained her aura. To her, opening the talisman was too easy. She didn't even need to drip her blood on the talisman. She just stretched out 2 fingers and wiped the talisman. After the talisman broke and the yellow light burst out, everyone tried their best to open their eyes and look at the garden. They were all very nervous. Xiao Mu, who was anticipating the appearance of a ferocious beast, was already in a fighting stance, waiting for the legendary ferocious beast to pounce on her and let her beat it into submission. However, a shrill cry rang in her ears, so shrill that her small body trembled. A few green feathers floated towards her, and the fluff drilled into her face. Arbor spat twice and wiped the fur on his face with his little hand. The shock in his eyes was still there. Suddenly, a creature with a neck and claws that were very slender and long, flapping a pair of incomparably short wings and squealing, hopped over, flapping its small wings as it chased after her while screaming. "Holy shit, with this appearance, isn't it just a mutated chicken?" This was a far cry from the ferocious beast she had in mind, all right? "You! Don't come over!" "Wah!" Arbor's eyes widened. Seeing the chicken pounce over, she suddenly turned around and ran out of the garden. Xiao Zhongbang and his wife looked at each other in dismay. They couldn't help but burst into laughter. Their daughter's behavior just now was too funny. This was how a little girl should be energetic. The husband and wife happily carried their daughter and chased after her. "Jojo, don't run around. The small parlor for eating is over there. Who would be in the mood to eat at a time like this? Arbor sadly looked up at the clear sky, her heart filled with helplessness. Chapter 153. Good morning, big brother, sister-in-law. Xiao Zhongxing had a good night's sleep and happily brought his son to the entrance of the small parlor. When he looked up and saw his eldest brother and his wife, he smiled and stopped. Who would have thought that when he turned around, he would see his niece, who was usually calm and composed and had the appearance of a little adult, being chased by a strange thing and running towards the reception pavilion behind him. She even let out an anxious voice from her mouth. Go back, go back. Xiao Zhongxing was dumbfounded. His son Xiao Hu exclaimed, Dad, it's a pheasant. Is it for us? Xiao Zhongbang and his wife, Ahem, second brother, don't be nervous. Let's go and have breakfast first. Xiao Zhongbang smiled and patted his younger brother's shoulder. He thought of something and reached into his sleeve to take out a stack of 10 storage talismans, stuffing them into Xiao Zhongxing's hands. Big brother, what are these? Talisman papers? The talisman papers sold in the shop were very expensive, and most of them were fake. Where did his brother get these? Yes, these are storage talismans your niece drew. Let's go in and talk about it in detail. They sat at the round table. Xiao Zhongbang told his younger brother how to use the talismans. He patted his dazed younger brother and chuckled. Second brother, it's fine if we keep this between ourselves. Jojo said that it's not difficult to draw these talismans, you just have to use them. Xiao Zhongbang nodded at him. Xiao Zhongxing immediately understood. Don't worry, big brother, sister-in-law. I won't tell anyone about the talismans. It was too amazing. His niece was actually a rare talisman master. Wei Ziqin exhorted the children a few more times, then turned to look at her eldest daughter, who had been chased by the pheasant, and ran around in circles downstairs before bouncing back. Jojo, you guys eat first. Arbor dashed out the door again and disappeared in an instant. The little foodie nibbled on a pastry and suddenly said in a childish voice, Big sister, you're so funny. Everyone burst into laughter. Arbor ran all the way out of the reception hall and rushed to the gate. That damn chicken, flapping its short wings as it chased after her, incessantly clucking. She was the one who summoned it, so she had to swallow this bitter fruit herself. Arbor ran to the door and suddenly stopped. He turned to Newbie and stretched out his hand. Stop right there. The pheasant took small steps and stopped. Suddenly, it flapped its small wings and spat out a column of water. Xiaomu was caught off guard. How could she have known that this weakling could spit saliva? She was immediately covered in water from head to toe, dripping down. The little guy's eyes immediately burned with anger. Suddenly, he grabbed the ferrule in his hand and chased after Newbie. Don't run, you weakling. Let's see if I can beat this brat to death. Coo. Even though this weak chicken didn't have much meat on its body, it was extremely nimble and clever. When it saw Xiaomu rushing over with an ominous glint in her eyes, it hurriedly flapped its little wings and ran towards the entrance of the alley. Don't run. Arbor was both angry and amused. After turning a corner, they arrived at the gate of the city lord's mansion. Arbor paused slightly. She didn't expect to see a group of people kneeling in front of the city lord's mansion. That weak chicken rushed over and left claw marks on their heads, causing the people kneeling in front of the city lord's mansion to cry out in alarm. Arbor was so angry that the corners of her lips twitched. She suddenly took out the spirit-binding rope and threw it out. Coo. The pheasant's legs were bound by a hemp rope. It still wanted to run, but the child's wrist tightened. It couldn't help but flap its short wings and scream as it fell into the child's hands. Chapter 154. Arbor's small hand pinched the chicken's neck, causing the chicken to make pitiful cooing sounds. Don't cry. Arbor hit the chicken's head in annoyance, grabbed the chicken's neck and turned to leave. Arbor! A shout came from the gate of the mayor's mansion. Arbor turned to see Qiao Wenjuan's figure striding over, and raised her eyebrows slightly. It seemed that Qiao Wenjuan had the ability to escape after obtaining the special speed. After she was kicked out of the team, Xiao Mu already couldn't be bothered to speak with her, so she merely swept her a glance when she saw her before expressionlessly turning around to leave with the chicken in her hand. Stop right there, Arbor. Xiao Wenwan rushed behind Arbor, and just as her fingers were about to grab her slender arm, Arbor impolitely kicked her. Xiao Wenwan cried out in surprise, and she took a few steps back and sat on the ground. Wife. Third brother Wei ran over and helped Xiao Wenwan up. Arbor then realized that Xiao Wenwan had combed her hair. Xiao Wenwan got married after not seeing her for 2 days? This seemed to be a bit fast. Nei Nei Nyo ran up, and her shrewd eyes scanned Xiao Mu from head to toe. When she saw that this child's cheeks were rosy and her clothes were bright and beautiful, a shrewd glint flitted across her eyes. Isn't this old Xiao's family's Arbor? Madame Nyo walked up with a smile, and tried to hold Arbor's little hand. Do you still remember Granny Nyo from the Wei family village? Arbor took a step back with the chicken, and said with a wooden face, I don't know you. Madame Nyo's deliberate smile suddenly froze on her face. This child, didn't the two families meet a while ago because of your aunt's marriage? Madame Nyo smiled awkwardly. But you're still young, so it's normal that you don't remember. Where's your grandmother? Granny Nyo is going to greet your grandmother. Seeing that this child was dressed in clean and beautiful clothes, she must be living a good life. It had been hard on the Wei clan to flee all the way here. They were exhausted and didn't even have a place to stay. If they didn't go now, when would they? Miss Chow, did the commotion caused by the city lord's mansion in the middle of the night disturb your rest? The scholar Zhang Yan walked over and asked with a gentle expression. Last night, concubine Lu's reckless second nephew caused a huge commotion. In his fury, the city lord almost chased concubine Lu's entire family out of Shijiao City. That night, Master Lu tied up his second son and knelt in front of the mayor's mansion to beg for forgiveness. Concubine Lu cried for the entire night, causing chaos in the mayor's mansion. With such a large commotion, the Chao residence, which was only half an alley away, was definitely affected. Zhang Yan looked at the child apologetically. No. Arbor shook his head. Mr. Zhang, you worry too much. We had a good rest. That's good. Zhang Yan nodded with a smile. Madame Nyo's line of sight, back and forth on Zhang Yan Arbor's body, emitted bursts of sparks. Arbor, this brat, was actually so close to the city lord's personal scholar. It seemed like there was hope to fight for some benefits for their Wei clan. That. Mr. Zhang, if there's nothing else, I'll go back first. Arbor didn't wait for Madame Nyo to speak and nodded at Zhang Yan before turning to leave. You. Madame Nyo was so angry that her face turned green when she saw that the little fellow didn't give her any face. How would Xiao Mu pay attention to her? She carried the squawking chicken and walked straight home. Isn't this big sister Zichin's Jojo? A gentle voice entered Arbor's ears, causing his expression to instantly turn extremely cold. Chapter 155. This voice sounded a bit younger than in her previous life, but it was still as familiar as a nightmare. She would never forget it. She appeared. When Rowan, this venomous woman, no matter how docile and pleasant she pretended to be, it could not erase her venomous nature. In her previous life, when Rowan only appeared by her grandmother's side a year after the zombie outbreak, her mother's health deteriorated after giving birth to her younger brother. In this life, when Rowan actually appeared ahead of schedule. In reality, she could not understand why when Rowan targeted her father when she was so scheming and capable. She could have schemed against any powerful and influential family. In the beginning, her father did not agree to marry when Rowan no matter what. It was one thing for him to be intimidated by her grandmother, but Arbor felt that there was more to it than met the eye. At that time when Rowan was dead set on marrying Qiao Zhongbang. Qiao Zhongbang was a person with crippled mystic veins. How could Wen Rowan take a liking to him? Don't talk about love. Arbor scoffed. She must have missed out on some benefits. At this moment, Wen Rowan's warm smile hung on her lips. However, when she met Xiao Mu's gaze, which was like a deep whirlpool that continuously tore at her soul, she couldn't help but be taken aback. This child's gaze. Why did it seem like it carried a chill from the abyss? There was bone-deep hatred in his eyes. Could it be that she was imagining things? When Rowan blinked, when she looked over again, she saw the child's wooden face without any expression. Phew. As expected, it was her imagination. Jojo, is Aunt doing well? When Rowan's voice was very soft and sweet, It was pleasant to the ear. Grandmother? She's doing quite well. Arbor looked meaningfully at Wen Rowan. Aunt Wen also wants to visit grandmother? In fact, Wen Rowan was her grandmother's distant niece. In her previous life, her grandmother doted on Wen Rowan dearly. It would not be an exaggeration to say that she treated Wen Rowan as half a daughter. If it weren't for grandmother's support, father wouldn't have married Wen Rowan not long after mother passed away. Wen Rowan felt that there was a hint of mockery in the child's soft voice, but when she looked over, she could not discern anything from the expressionless face. Wen Rowan showed what she thought was her friendliest and most beautiful smile. She nodded at Arbor and said, "As a junior, Rowan will naturally visit Aunt." Arbor glanced at her with an indifferent expression. Grandmother is sick. She's not in a good condition to meet guests. Aunt Wen is considerate. I will pass the message to grandmother. Aunt is sick. As a junior I should go. Wen Rowan did not expect to be rejected, so she hurriedly said, "Who do you think you are? I'll take care of my mother. Arbor, take me to my mother. I'm warning you, if anything happens to my mother, I won't let you off." Xiao Wenwan said with a stern expression, "Mr. Zhang, I remember that not just anyone can enter the city center. Right?" Arbor said coldly, "That's right." Zhang Yan hastily nodded and said, "These people were brought here for questioning because of second young Master Lu. Don't worry, Miss Chow. I'll take care of their whereabouts. Take care, Miss Chow." Arbor nodded. He picked up the chicken that kept squawking and quickly left. Xiao Wenjuan's eyes nearly popped out of their sockets. She chased after Arbor and shouted a few times, but the guards of the city lord's estate mercilessly stopped her. "The Chow estate's private residence is ahead," Mr. Zhang said indifferently. "Don't enter without the owner's permission." Chapter 156. I'm the Chow estate's daughter. I'm that little girl's aunt. Ah. Xiao Wenwan was rudely shoved by the guards and fell into the crowd of Wei family members. "What are you doing?" Xiao Wenwan shouted angrily, her pretty face flushing purple. "Give them their identity tablets," Zhang Yan casually ordered. Zhang Yan ordered casually, then turned and walked towards the group of people from the Lu clan kneeling at the door. "Come with me." Family head Lu felt as if he had been granted amnesty and heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. He kicked the groaning second Lu and said, "Unfilial son, get up. Later kowtow to your uncle a few more times. Let's see what kind of trouble you've caused in the estate. If you don't beg for your uncle's forgiveness today, I'll kick you out of the Lu family and let you fend for yourself." Causing trouble in the middle of the night and angrily smashing the city gates. This unfilial son was the one who did all these shameful things. If it weren't for his old face, perhaps their Lu family would have already been kicked out of Shizhou City by the city lord. Second Lu pursed his lips and got up from the ground feeling wronged. He did not forget to look back at Wen Rowan and smiled obsequiously. "Little sister Shaowan, wait for me." Dad, what are you doing?" Second Lu, whose left ear was grabbed by family head Lu, was in so much pain that his head tilted to the side. He followed family head Lu to the city lord's estate and kept calling out little sister Shaowan. "Coward! What a useless guy. She even had to sacrifice her body and let this coward take advantage of her the entire way." She was really infuriated. When Rowan resentfully glared at second Lu's back before curtsying to a guard from the city lord's estate, she said softly, "Little brother, I'm a relative of that little girl from before. I really want to visit my aunt. Can you make things easy for me?" The guards of the city lord's estate saw that she was beautiful and elegant, unlike Xiao Wenwan, who shouted and made a ruckus like a village woman without any etiquette. Thus, they had a better impression of Wen Rowan and spoke to her more politely. "Miss, it's not that we want to stop you, but you heard what Miss Chow said just now. The old madam of the Chow family is not seeing guests recently, so please don't make things difficult for us." That young guard mysteriously said to Wen Rowan that Miss Xiao Chow is an honored guest that our city lord ordered to treat well and not offend. Wen Rowan felt gloomy and displeased, but she still put on a gentle smile and nodded obediently. "Then we'll have to trouble you to send us away, little brother." Of course. On the contrary, the guard liked the gentle and docile Wen Rowan very much. He deliberately rummaged through the pile of wooden tablets and handed one to her, saying with a smile, "Although we're all staying in the shanty district, there are also good and bad places to stay." The location of this wooden plaque was one of the better spots in the shed area. "When you go to the west of the city, miss, you must be careful." When Rowan thanked him on the surface, but she felt disdainful on the inside. So what if he gave her a bamboo tile that corresponded to her location? And it wasn't even in that damned low-class shanty town. She really didn't expect that she, when Rowan, would have to live in the shed area. The city lord's estate guard threw a handful of bamboo tablets to Chow Wan and the others. "These are your identity tablets. Take one from each family. Guards, immediately send them to the west of the city." Chow Wan immediately kicked one of the tablets and shouted fiercely like a shrew, "What right do you have to make us leave? My mother lives here. I want to find my mother. You don't have the right to make me leave. Mother. Mother. Mother." Chapter 157. Make them leave immediately. As soon as the head of the bodyguards gave the order, two people immediately came forward and unceremoniously grabbed Chow Wan, who was struggling and shouting. They carried her all the way out of Pear Blossom Alley. Chow Wan screamed until her throat was hoarse. She was so angry that sparks could fly out of her eyes. She kept cursing, "Arbor, you cursed little bastard, how dare you treat your aunt like this? You're utterly devoid of conscience and morals. I'll see how you'll die in the future." The city lord's estate's guards were experienced in dealing with this kind of shrew. They directly stuffed a dirty rag into Chow Wan's mouth, and her screams abruptly stopped. The two of them worked together to drag Chow Wan outside and threw her onto the donkey cart without the slightest bit of pity for the fairer sex. The city lord's estate's guards pushed the Wei family members onto the donkey cart one after another, and pulled the cart toward the west of the city. However, they were more courteous to Wen Rowan. They even specially gave her a gentle pony and let her ride it alone. The Wei family left with sullen faces while cursing at the heavens and earth. Arbor carried the chicken's neck back home, and did not pay attention to the farce in front of the city lord's estate. "Caw caw caw caw. You're going to caw again? I'll turn you into a bald chicken and pluck out all your feathers," Arbor threatened coldly, not caring if the chicken understood him or not. Sure enough, the chicken did not dare to caw. It flapped its wings and cawed pitifully. "Heh, what are you dissatisfied with?" Arbor coldly glanced at the chicken. "I'm the one who's embarrassed. Have you ever seen anyone use a summoning talisman to summon a bald chicken? I'm truly the first person since ancient times." Arbor huffed angrily. He got a bit angry just talking about it. "Caw caw caw." A certain chicken flapped its wings indignantly and spouted water all the way. The child unreservedly flicked its head. "If you keep spouting water, I'll twist your head off and kick it like a ball." A certain person felt very miserable. "Child, did your parents know that you're so savage? Do you think you're so great just because you can spray water? I can find a street performer and he can even spit fire." Arbor angrily rebuked the chicken. Then he felt that he was a little funny. This chicken, perhaps when it was summoned by him, it also felt extremely helpless and had no choice. "I'm telling you, when it's time, go back immediately. The next time I use the summoning talisman, you have to be more careful. Don't come and join in the fun. Okay? I'll let it go this time. I forgive you. Let's get along well and part on good terms. After one day, leave quickly and don't look back." She was a great talisman master who had to summon fierce beasts like lions, tigers, bears, leopards, and so on. How could she endure summoning a chicken? As soon as Steward Chongzai opened the door, he saw his stoic-faced little miss holding a chicken in one hand and muttering nonstop. That scene was indescribably beautiful. Chongzai's mouth twitched as he opened the door for Arbor and welcomed her in. "Miss, Master and Madam said that you haven't eaten breakfast yet. Do you need some now?" Arbor shook his head. "No need, Butler Chong. I'm going to old Madam's room. Is Sun Yang there?" Speaking of Sun Yang, Chongzai wanted to shed a tear of sympathy for her. Sun Yang was in charge of chores like sweeping the courtyard, and was also assigned by the little master to go out and buy things. When she had time, she still had to go to old Madam's room to wait on her. She was as busy as a spinning top every day. Old Madam doesn't need much service. Serve her 3 meals a day and make her a pot of tea to cool down. Arbor carried the chicken and walked as she said indifferently at this time, "It's already good enough to have 3 meals a day. What's there to be so particular about?" Chapter 158. The corner of Chong Zai's mouth twitched. He could tell that the young master did not like the old lady very much. Chong Zai respectfully led Arbor to the door of the old lady's room. He gave Sun Yang a look, and the two of them left together. The old lady's leg had not recovered yet. When Arbor threw away the chicken and walked into the room, the old lady was half leaning on the bed. Seeing Arbor walk in, the old lady coughed awkwardly. "Jojo is here." "Grandmother." Arbor bowed indifferently. Although his expression was cold, Old Lady Chow could not find any fault with his etiquette. "Sit, Jojo." Old Lady Chow's face was full of kindness. She wanted to mend the relationship between her and her granddaughter. Old Lady Chow saw everything that happened at the city gate of Shizhou City. She finally realized that her granddaughter was very different from before. Her granddaughter seemed to have a lot of power. Even the mayor and the others were polite to her. How could an old lady like her not know how to adapt to the situation? Arbor sat down on the small stool beside the old lady's bed. He took out a family separation document from his sleeve and spread it in front of the old lady. Old Lady Chow's eyes twitched. She did not understand what the child was doing. "Grandmother, I met a group of people at the street corner just now. They said it was Mrs. Nyo from the Wei family village. Are you familiar with them?" "Wasn't the Wei family village?" Old Lady Chow was surprised. "That's your aunt's future in-laws. My aunt has already married herself. She's with them now." "What?" Old Lady Chow looked at Arbor in shock. "Your aunt is really getting married?" Arbor nodded. "There's also a girl with the surname one. She and my aunt wanted to see you, but I stopped them. That Miss One said she's your distant niece. Are you familiar with her?" Old Lady Chow's forehead twitched. She raised her hand to rub her head and sighed. "Child, if you have something to say, just say it. I don't mean anything else. I just want to ask Grandmother, do you want to live with your daughter, son-in-law, and your distant niece? Or do you plan to stay here and live with us?" Arbor's face was indifferent as he caressed the separation document. "After all, our Chow family has officially separated. I have no obligation to care about the private affairs of other families, let alone Chow Wenwan, who has married and stayed in the Wei family. Father and mother are kind-hearted. It's only right for them to support Grandmother." Arbor looked at the old lady meaningfully. "As for the others, our family is not a charity." Old Madam Chow couldn't help but smile bitterly. This child was beating around the bush to force her to make a statement and warn her to know her place. "Jojo, don't worry. Grandmother isn't stupid. Why would she interfere with the Wei family's business? As for your little aunt, Sai." Old Lady Chow was at a loss for words when she recalled how her daughter had pushed her out as a scapegoat. Arbor nodded in satisfaction, stood up, bowed, and left. Looking at her granddaughter's resolute figure, Old Lady Chow suddenly felt a little regretful. She didn't even want to say a single word to her. Was it so easy to mend a broken heart in the past? 2 days later, outside the royal palace's Qian Yuqian gate, 3 large carriages of goods were parked. 2 rows of guards stood on the left and right, looking valiant and formidable. The captain of the guard standing at the front held a large red brocade box in his hands and looked straight ahead. "Stop the carriage." A gorgeous carriage stopped outside the Qian Yuqian gate. The carriage curtain lifted, and a graceful figure darted out of the carriage, snatching the large red brocade box from the captain's hands. What a dense mystic energy aura. Chapter 159. The guard captain was shocked and dodged backward while holding the brocade box. He raised his scabbard to block the soft, jade-like hand. "Commandery Princess, please stay your hand. This is a gift prepared by His Highness the Crown Prince. Please be careful and don't damage it." "A gift from Brother Crown Prince? Who is it for?" The newcomer was a young girl about 13 years old. She was wearing a long dress embroidered with golden flowers, and her glossy black hair reached her waist. There was an 8 treasure glazed hairpin inserted into her loose black hair. Her skin was creamy, and her face was like a full moon. She was extremely charming. At this moment, her hand was tightly clasped around the guard captain's wrist. Her eyes were sharp as she coldly stared at the other party. Commandery Princess Huiyan. The guard captain did not appear overly flustered when facing this pampered commandery princess. He only respectfully said, "This subordinate is only responsible for escorting this batch of goods and does not know anything else. Let go. Let this commandery princess see what's inside the box." Commandery Princess Huiyan pursed her lips and coldly stared at the guard captain. "Please forgive this subordinate for not being able to comply." Insolence. Commandery Princess Huiyan was enraged. She raised her willowy eyebrows and glared at him coldly. "Hitian, you, a mere centurion of the Imperial Guard, dare to look down on this commandery princess like this? How should you be punished?" "Commandery Princess, this subordinate does not dare. However, this subordinate has no choice but to obey the king's orders. Commandery Princess, please make way. This subordinate and his subordinates still need to leave the city and cannot be delayed." Hitian held the box with one hand and crossed his thick arm in front of his chest as he loudly spoke to Commandery Princess Huiyan. "You impudent dog slave! How dare you look down on this commandery princess?" Commandery Princess Huiyan gritted her teeth and cursed as she pulled out a whip from her waist. With a smack, she heavily swung it at Hitian's arm. Hitian was as immovable as a mountain and tightly hugged the brocade box in his arm. His eyes were unperturbed as he looked at the pampered commandery princess and coldly said, "Commandery Princess, this subordinate is following His Highness the Crown Prince's orders. You dog slave, you're using Brother Crown Prince to suppress this commandery princess again." Huiyan didn't wait for him to finish before scolding him. She raised the whip in her hand again, and this time, she didn't hesitate to lash it at Captain Hitian's face. Seeing that the whip was about to land on Hitian's face, Hitian did not dodge or move. A magnetic voice with endless coldness suddenly sounded. "Huiyan, what are you doing?" Commandery Princess Huiyan's whip was raised high in the air, unable to descend. She turned her head and hurriedly put away the whip. She put on a soft and sweet expression and ran up the stairs with a face full of joy. "Brother Crown Prince." She raised her head to look at that faintly discernible white robe. Although His Highness the Crown Prince was standing against the light and his handsome face couldn't be seen clearly, Huiyan didn't know why, but her maiden heart felt like it was about to jump out of her chest, thumping non-stop. "It stinks." Before Commandery Princess Huiyan could come within 2 feet of him, the Crown Prince swiftly raised his leg and very nonchalantly kicked the flying commandery princess down the steps. Hidden Flower, the captain of the hidden pavilion, who was standing beside the Crown Prince, was speechless. The ministers who had rushed down the steps to speak with the Crown Prince, Commandery Princess Huiyan rolled down the steps. She originally wanted to steady herself, but for some reason, she tripped and fell flat on her face. The scene was so beautiful that no one could bear to look at it directly. "Why are you still standing here?" The Crown Prince angrily rebuked Hitian with a sullen face. "Are you an idiot? You don't know how to fight back when someone hits you? You didn't even dodge. Do you think you're made of stone?" The ministers who had rushed down to mediate the fight. "That's a commandery princess, my lord. Is it really okay for you to instigate a lowly centurion under your command to rebel and attack the commandery princess?" Chapter 160. Hitian immediately cupped his hands and admitted his mistake with a serious expression. "Yes, this humble subordinate will immediately depart. The next time I encounter something like this, I definitely won't not retaliate." Hidden Flower's mouth twitched. He freaking felt that the personal guards brought by the royal guard commander, Hui Feng, were similar to him. A bunch of hotheads. The Crown Prince, who was worried sick about his subordinates, sighed helplessly and turned to look at Hidden Flower. "Why are you still here? This subordinate will go immediately." Hidden Flower's expression turned solemn, and he quickly followed Hitian's group. He had promised His Highness the Crown Prince that he would personally patrol Shizhou City in His Highness' stead. It was not until Hitian's group had rolled far away that Commandery Princess Huiyan, who had fallen flat on her face, finally realized that her brother the Crown Prince had mercilessly kicked her flying. Commandery Princess, Her personal maidservant cautiously called out to the commandery princess. This maidservant will help you up. I don't need you to help me. Commandery Princess Hui and jumped up from the ground. Her well-groomed hair was half disheveled, and she looked very disheveled. The main reason was that she had fallen head first and nibbled on it, and the area around her nose was bleeding. Her appearance was too beautiful, so her personal maidservant did not dare to look straight at her. Go investigate. Investigate clearly. Brother Crown Prince, who did you give gifts to? Commandery Princess Hui and was so angry that her lips were trembling, and her heart full of tenderness and sweetness turned into fury. Seeing her personal maidservant's cowardly appearance, Huiyan slapped her and angrily shouted, "Hurry and help this commandery princess tidy up my appearance. This commandery princess will immediately see Her Majesty the Queen." Her personal maidservant shrunk her neck with a bitter expression. Although she was afraid of commandery Princess Huiyan, she still could not help but console her. Her Majesty values His Highness the Crown Prince more than her eyes. If such a small matter is brought to Her Majesty, it will only cause her displeasure. Commandery Princess Huiyan angrily stomped her feet. I don't care. Then I'll go reason with Her Majesty the Queen Dowager. Commandery Princess, let's return to the estate first. A few maidservants followed behind her and bitterly consoled her. Although the Queen Dowager usually doted on the commandery princess, if it was related to Her Majesty the Queen Dowager's precious grandson, even 10 commandery princesses would not be enough. Commandery Princess Hui and was so angry that she left the royal palace in tears. When Emolian heard the report from the eunuch Xiao 11Z, she didn't even raise her head. She only made a sound of acknowledgement, and the brush in her hand moved slightly before she placed it to the side. The crown prince propped up his chin with one hand and tilted his head to look at the table. This continued until Xiao 11Z cautiously called out, "Your Highness the Crown Prince, the 9th and 10th princesses have arrived." Oh! The crown prince moved his elbow and raised his head. His gaze fell on the door. Go ahead. The 9th princess and the 10th princess were both born from concubine Shi. One was 8 years old and the other was 7 years old. Their ages weren't too far apart and they were both cute and delicate. When the 2 children were led into the Eastern Palace by their wet nurses, they were very nervous. Their mother's exhortations kept echoing in their ears. When you go to the Eastern Palace, you must be courteous and respectful to the Crown Prince. You must do everything possible to please the Crown Prince. You must not let the Crown Prince dislike you. Inksnow. Molly. Greetings to the Crown Prince. The 2 of them both crouched and saluted. They were young but they had learned proper etiquette deep into their bones. Their every move was very standard, as if they were puppets carved from the same mold. Emolian frowned. She only glanced at her 2 younger sisters before losing interest. Chapter 161. They really were completely different children. The Crown Prince was a bit melancholy, so it wasn't that he changed his personality and liked to be close to children. Instead, the Crown Prince no longer had any interest in looking at his 2 younger sisters. He waved his hand, and Xiao 11Z went forward to whisper something to the 2 wet nurses accompanying them. The wet nurses of the 2 princesses were stunned for a moment before they immediately nodded. They each held the 9th and 10th princesses' small hands and led them out of the Eastern Palace. From beginning to end, the 2 little princesses didn't know what had happened. Why did their royal brother, the Crown Prince, only glance at them and let them leave without saying anything? After leaving the Eastern Palace, the 10th princess burst into tears and asked timidly while sobbing, "Wet nurse, did we make royal brother Crown Prince angry?" The 10th princess wet nurse dotingly hugged the child and repeatedly said, No, His Highness the Crown Prince is busy with work, so he let us leave first." The 10th princess asked pitifully with teary eyes, "Really? Then why didn't royal brother say anything to us? Does he not like us?" The wet nurse repeatedly nodded and then hurriedly shook her head. No, don't worry, princess. I will explain to Her Highness concubine Shi. Both princesses are so polite and considerate, so how could His Highness the Crown Prince not like you? Xiao 11Z, who had sent them out, helplessly watched as the wet nurse led the 2 princesses away. He shook his head and returned to the Eastern Palace. Sigh, I don't know what's wrong with that lord at home again, but he suddenly said that he wanted to see his 2 royal sisters. In the end, he sent them away without saying anything after they came. Crown Prince, you'll really scare little children if you act so recklessly. When Xiao 11Z returned to the room, he immediately saw his master maintaining the same posture of propping up his chin with his hand and staring motionlessly at the table. He's been standing there in a daze for at least 15 minutes. Xiao 11Z trotted to the Crown Prince's side and wanted to take a look at the table out of curiosity. However, he saw the Crown Prince reach out 2 fingers to pick up the thin drawing paper and raise it high. Xiao 11Z didn't even see a strand of hair. On the drawing paper was a little girl with a stoic face. She was expressionlessly looking at him. Her clear black and white eyes were like 2 cold pools. If one wasn't careful, they could suck in one's soul remembrance. The little girl in the painting was held above her head by 2 hands. If he dared to do this in real life, she would definitely beat him until his face was swollen. The Crown Prince stared at the painting for a long time and muttered to himself, "You look at me expressionlessly all day long, probably because you are lazy. Fine. Laugh. Let's go." Who's looking at His Highness expressionlessly? Who dares to be so rude in front of His Highness that he can't even be bothered to smile? Xiao 11Z immediately jumped out and voiced his doubts. Who was so fearless as to treat their master like this? When had their master's temper ever been so good? I can't kill her. The Crown Prince glanced at his personal eunuch and thought, so stupid. Why did I take him in? Your Highness, the 2 princesses left the Eastern Palace with apprehension. They were very sad. Xiao 11Z hurriedly came forward and reported, I'm afraid that when I return, I won't be able to escape concubine. She's scolding. The Crown Prince said nothing. Xiao 11Z snuck a glance at the Crown Prince and cleared his throat before asking, why did your Highness chase the 2 princesses away without saying a word? Saying a few words of comfort was better than not saying anything at all, right? Because. The Crown Prince smoothed out the drawing paper in his hand and gently folded it. He then stood up and slowly said, they're not as cute as her at all. Chapter 162. The Vassal King of Anan's Estati. A series of messy smashing noises came from Commandery Princess Hui An's boudoir. And it had not stopped for an hour. Commandery Princess, Guard Nian has returned. Her personal maidservant tremblingly closed the door, and was almost hit in the head by a teacup thrown at her. She rolled on the floor in a panic and repeatedly kowtowed to beg for mercy. Idiot! Hurry up and call him in. Commandery Princess Hui An angrily sat down on the round-back chair and fiercely slammed the table. A tanned young man who looked like a farmer strode in and cupped his hands in salute. Commandery Princess. This subordinate has investigated and found that the caravan is heading toward Shizhou City. What kind of place is Shizhou City? The Commandery Princess frowned. Shizhou City is quite far from the royal capital. It's a small city. Why did Brother Crown Prince send people there? Hui An muttered to herself. This subordinate has also investigated and found that the Crown Prince ordered people to wantonly purchase a lot of items for young ladies in the city these past 2 days. Women. Hui An's voice rose an octave before she heavily slammed the table. She gritted her teeth and said, what a little bitch. When did His Highness the Crown Prince get seduced by a little bitch without her knowledge? Nian Kuei, I want you to immediately take 2 people and follow them. Once you reach Shizhou City, investigate that bitch's origins. Commandery Princess Hui An's voice was as cold as ice. Yes, Commandery Princess. Nian Kuei nodded. Should we capture her? No need. Hui An gritted her teeth and pushed a small box in front of Nian Kuei. Just make that little bitch consume this. Hui An's lips tugged into a malicious smile. I want that bitch to beg for death. Since she dared to steal Brother Crown Prince's favor from her, the Golden Commandery Princess Hui An, then she would make that bitch suffer for the rest of her life. Your Highness. Hui Feng lightly leaped and landed outside the pavilion before saluting. The Crown Prince was sitting next to the railing in a leisurely and elegant manner. His slender fingers pinched a few pieces of pastry powder and tossed them into the pool. Commandery Princess Hui An sent 3 royal guards to Shizhou City. One of them is a 7th-layer body-tempering cultivator. Huifeng's words caused the crown prince's fingers to pause. A trace of mockery flashed in the depths of the crown prince's eyes. His voice was indifferent as he said, "Let her be. You'll die if you underestimate baby Qiao." His mood was inexplicably excited. Darling Qiao should be quite bored after settling down in Shizhou City, so it would be good for her to practice her skills with these three idiots. "Your Highness, the Great King has summoned you. Read it." The Crown Prince flicked his sleeves, his voice indifferent. The Great King decreed, "For the past few days, the zombies have been wreaking havoc in the royal city, causing the people to be unable to make a living and suffering. This lonely one is deeply worried and unable to sleep at night. Today, I've decided to go to Mount Hong to pray for the people and set off immediately." He promoted the Crown Prince to be a regent and to handle the daily affairs of the state. The afternoon breeze caressed the Crown Prince's face. Although the weather was very hot, the eunuch who delivered the edict felt waves of cold air. After reading the edict, he stood there stiffly, not daring to move. The Crown Prince raised his eyebrows with a faint smile. Who else did the Great King bring with him? Although the Crown Prince didn't fly into a rage, he could still feel his terrifying rage. The edict eunuch said with trepidation, "The Great King brought Consort Zheng and noble lady He. Hm? And the edict eunuch rattled off the names of several beauties. The Crown Prince nodded, his eyes cold and cheerless. "You may withdraw." The edict eunuch wiped his sweat and hurried away. He felt a chill run down his spine. The Great King left behind a pile of mess and ran off like this. Will Your Highness the Crown Prince really allow you to peacefully enjoy a beautiful holiday? Isn't it a bit too monotonous with only beauties? The Crown Prince narrowed his eyes and muttered to himself, "Throw a few zombies over and let the Great King have some liveliness over there. Huifeng. The Great King, please take care of yourself." Shizhou City. After Darling Qiao finished absorbing the last magnetite, she looked up at the darkening sky outside the window. "Miss, there's a youth from Daybreak sect who calls himself Duanyu requesting an audience. Why did Duanyu come here?" Chapter 163. A camphor tree was planted outside the window, and several kingfishers perched on its branches, chirping from time to time. The sky outside the window had completely darkened. Arbor threw away the last magnetite in her hand and sighed. The mystic energy she could absorb from 500 low-grade magnetite was less than 1/10 of it. Most of it went into the sapling's mouth. This was truly too much of a scam. At this rate, when would she be able to advance into the ranks of level 5 mystic cultivators? Arbor looked up outside the window when she heard 2 knocks on the door. "Miss, a youth from the Daybreak sect, Duanyu, is requesting an audience." Steward Changzai stood behind the door, not daring to speak too loudly. Xiaomu jumped down from the bed and opened the door. She walked to the steward with her little paws behind her back. "What is he doing here?" "Miss, isn't this youth your friend?" Changzai was surprised. That youth came to the door with a chuckle and claimed to be Little Miss's friend. He thought the youth and his Little Miss were acquaintances. Arbor's footsteps paused and her gaze was icy. Her childish voice should have been soft, but it carried an inexplicable murderous aura. "I've never had any friends." The steward's heart trembled, and he took a step back and bowed. "This old servant understands." Arbor pattered toward the side hall. Although she did not speak the entire way, the steward inexplicably sensed the low pressure coming from the little master. It was not until she entered the hall and her gaze landed on the elegantly seated youth drinking tea that Xiaomu coldly said, "In the future, don't casually let in unimportant people." Duanyu was originally drinking tea without restraint, but his hand froze when he heard the child's retort. Why was this child so unadorable? "Hey, is this the attitude you should have toward a friend?" Duanyu angrily threw the teacup on the table and jumped up from the chair. "No matter what, we're friends who have gone through thick and thin together, through fire and water, through life and death together." "I don't have any friends." Xiaomu frowned and looked at him strangely. Duanyu immediately exploded. You, what kind of gaze and attitude is that? You. What did you say? What do you mean by no friends? I thought that after going through a life and death situation together, we should be good friends who can go through thick and thin together, right?" He was infuriated. How could there be such an evil child in this world? When she didn't speak, she looked obedient and cute. She was soft and cute. The moment she opened her mouth, he wanted to kill her. No friends. The child bluntly retorted him with 3 words, which angered Duanyu so much that he jumped up and wanted to run out the door. He didn't want to talk to her anymore. This facial paralysis, this ice-cold wooden doll. This little bastard. He was really looking for trouble. That was why he rushed here to be scolded by her. The little fellow pattered over to the seat of honor and jumped up, looking coldly at the youth standing in front of him. The little guy was sitting on the round-back chair. He was only half the size of the chair. He curled up into a soft ball on the chair with his little arms and legs slightly raised. For a split second, Duanyu suddenly wanted to laugh. Why did he get angry with a little kid? Duanyu decisively returned to his seat and looked at the child face to face. Just because we didn't have any friends before doesn't mean we won't have any in the future. From today onward we are friends. Tomorrow, the Mystic Cultivator Association will send someone to guide the children in the city and open their mystic meridians. Jojo, let's go take a look together. Chapter 164. Not interested. The child's words were like a boulder that forcefully suppressed Duanyu's enthusiasm. How could there be such a heartless and emotionless child in this world? Normally, when a child heard someone's invitation to go out and play, wouldn't they happily agree to it? What kind of mutant was this child? How could she be so loathsome? Jojo. Second Uncle Chow suddenly walked in excitedly. Didn't this little brother say earlier that an instructor from the Mystic Cultivator Association will come tomorrow to guide the children in the city to open their mystic meridians? Arbor glanced at Chow who was hiding behind second uncle. That child's round head was lowered and he kept rubbing the corner of his clothes, looking uneasy and uneasy. Yes. Arbor jumped down from the chair and pattered to Chow Hu's side. She grabbed his hand. Brother Chow Hu, I'll accompany you to find an instructor to open your mystic meridians tomorrow. Don't worry, it doesn't matter if you succeed or not. We're just going to try, so don't put too much pressure on yourself. Chow Hu looked up at Arbor pitifully. Sister, I've already tried for 3 years, but I haven't succeeded in opening my mystic meridians. What's wrong with that? Some people try 8 to 10 times in a row before succeeding. You've only tried 3 times, so it's nothing. Maybe we'll succeed this time. Arbor comforted Chow Hu by patting his shoulder. Really? Chow Hu's eyes brightened. Duanyu looked at the child with a stifled expression. Why was she so cold and heartless when he spoke to her? It was as if she kept him at arm's length. However, the child even learned how to comfort that thick-headed brat. Then I'll come pick you up tomorrow morning. Seeing that the child was about to turn around and refuse, Duanyu quickly said, I can take you through a special passage. There's no need to line up. The child ran to his side with small steps, raised his head and waved at him. So cute. She's a baby when she doesn't speak. Duanyu bent down in surprise, and a strand of hair brushed past his face. What do you want to say to me? Slap. A talisman was slapped on the youth's forehead. Sleep. Second Uncle Chow. Duanyu. Chow Hu said, Sister, you're amazing. This is the demon suppression talisman, isn't it? Naughty child. You're thinking too much, okay? Those who go around with fake talismans and say that there are demons causing trouble in your house are all fake Taoist priests who cheat you of your money. You're the demon, your whole family are monsters. The youth's breath was stuck in his chest. After a long while, the young man stretched out 2 fair fingers and tore off the talisman that was floating on his forehead. Facing the child's bright and watery eyes, the youth was speechless for a moment. This is a new toy for children? Darling Chow sighed and crossed the tall threshold with her hands behind her back like an old man. As she walked, she muttered to herself, I didn't expect that such a weakling would have a higher cultivation than me. How helpless. Any random cat or dog was more powerful than her. It was all the little tree's fault for always fighting with her. Capital. Origin. Arbor looked up at the sky. If the opponent was 1 rank higher than her, they would be immune to the sleeping talisman's effects. Duanyu stiffly stood behind the threshold and stretched out his hand to call back that strange child. Come back and tell me, who's the weakling? Early the next morning after Arbor freshened up, She headed straight for the entrance. As expected, Duan Yu was waiting outside the Chao estate. When he saw her step out, he cheerfully greeted her. "Jojo, good morning." Chapter 165. One does not hit a smiling person, so Qiao Mu expressionlessly nodded her small head at him. Duan Yu's smile was brighter than a flower. "Let's go, Jojo. Get on the carriage." Today, not only did the Mystic Cultivator Association send people, but the three sects also sent people. Arbor got on the carriage with a taut face and waited solemnly. Xiao Hu anxiously glanced at his sister, but when he saw that she had no intention of speaking, he also shut his mouth. The carriage started rolling and headed toward the western part of the city where the crowd was gathered. Many city citizens had gathered at the plaza on the western part of the city early in the morning after hearing the news. They lined up with their families and inquired about the news with each other. They never dreamed that the Mystic Cultivator Association would come today to try to activate the children's mystic meridians. If their children could successfully activate their mystic meridians and become mystic cultivators, they would definitely be able to change their current impoverished situation. They would no longer need to live in this tiny shantytown in the western part of the city. Life in the shantytown was difficult and resources were scarce, so theft and robbery often occurred. Whoever had the biggest fist was the law. 2 days ago, a young couple was unlucky enough to be robbed when they entered the shantytown. The only food they had in their bags was also plundered. Now their lives were extremely miserable and they had to beg everywhere for a living. The chaotic western part of the city originally housed many people from other villages and towns. Because the Mystic Cultivator Association had set this place as the location for the children's test, the city lord sent people to chase away the refugees on the square and clean it up before the sun even rose. Hence, when Arbor's carriage arrived, the road was basically unobstructed. As the carriage rolled past the Main Street Plaza, Xiao Hu lifted the curtain to take a look. The western part of the city isn't as chaotic as imagined. It's just a little tidying up because there are guests. Arbor didn't need to look to know what kind of scene this place usually was. Earlier, at Shiju City's city gate, when the young couple refused to hand over their resources and came to live in the shantytown for free with a low-class sign, Mr. Zhang's meaningful gaze made it clear to Arbor that life in the shantytown might not be easy. In this kind of place where the strong preyed on the weak, a young couple with food would be robbed in a matter of minutes. Therefore, even if they didn't hand over their supplies, they wouldn't be able to keep their belongings. If they had handed it over at that time, they might have been able to exchange it for an ordinary residence in the north or south of the city. What the couple did was absolutely stupid, but Mr. Zhang had no obligation to remind them. Arbor walked down from the carriage, and immediately countless gazes gathered on her. The child wore a moon-white shirt, and his stoic face was expressionless. Although she didn't have any accessories on her body, she still gave people an indescribable feeling of nobility. "Yo, Xiao Hu, you've come to trigger your meridians again. As expected, you come every year without fail. Unfortunately, it's not of much use. My mother said that you're a good-for-nothing, and that you'll never become a mystic cultivator in this lifetime." A child's voice rudely entered Arbor's ears, causing her to involuntarily knit her brows. Arbor's cold gaze shot over and saw that it was an 8 or 9-year-old child. He wore a white robe in the style of the Daybreak sect, and the unique circular emblem of the Daybreak sect was embroidered on his chest. "Who are you?" Arbor felt that the little boy in front of him was somewhat familiar. Younger sister Chi's second aunt's son Qiao Kong. Second aunt. Arbor's "I don't know" expression made Xiao Tsong's heart burn with anger. "Are you an idiot?" Xiao Tsong pointed at Arbor and cursed. "You don't even recognize your second aunt, my mother." Chapter 166. Arbor's eyes chilled to the extreme. Without another word, she stepped forward and kicked Xiao Tsong in the stomach. Xiao Tsong's eyes widened as he was sent flying by the little girl's kick. He crashed into the back of the crowd, eliciting screams in a small area. Duan Yu followed behind her, but he simply couldn't stop her. He angrily flung his sleeves. Why did Daybreak sect only accept idiots with bad brains? Why did they provoke the little girl when they didn't have the ability? If this wasn't seeking death, then what was? Wah! Xiao Tsong, who was sent flying, felt a terrible pain in his stomach, and he opened his mouth wide to cry. Son! A middle-aged woman darted out of the crowd and rushed toward Xiao Kong. Arbor glanced at the woman and pondered for a moment before recalling this second aunt. Wasn't she Madame Neili, who once came to steal her supplies? So it was this outrageous second aunt. Xiao Yingchun followed behind Madame Neili and coyly jogged over. When she looked up and saw Arbor, her eyes widened. Mom, it's her. That little bitch who stole our clothes and jewelry is here. Hurry and teach her a lesson. You scoundrel! Madame Neili turned to point at Arbor and angrily rebuked. You still dare to appear in front of us? Where's your mom? Tell Wei Ziqin to come out. I want to have a good talk with her. Do you know how to teach your daughter? What kind of thing have you raised? Stealing things and hitting her older brother without any etiquette or rules. Truly a little bastard. With a dark expression, Arbor took out an identity tablet with a flip of his hand and flashed it at the dumbfounded guards of the city lord's estate. Capture her. The words superior were carved on the back of the tablet. This was a pampered guest from the city center. The guards' expressions turned solemn, and they immediately rushed toward the jabbering Madame Neili. They grabbed her arms behind her back and shoved her in front of Arbor. Slap her until I'm satisfied, Arbor coldly ordered, his soft childish voice devoid of any emotion. A guard slapped Madame Neili's face. Slap. For a moment the square was silent. Even the 3 mentors of the Mystic Cultivator Association who were sitting in front of the long table and giving guidance tests to the children in line stood up and looked at the commotion with confusion. Pa! Slap! She slapped Madame Li's face repeatedly. Madame Li's hands were clamped behind her back. At first, she could still struggle and curse at Arbor. After a dozen or so slaps, his cheeks began to feel numb, and he couldn't even open his mouth. Xiao Tsong was furious. A layer of mystic energy covered his fist as he angrily flew towards Arbor and swung his fist at her face. Slut! Go to hell! You overestimate yourself. Xiao Mu gripped his fist with a backhand. Xiao Tsong widened his eyes in shock. He knew very well how fast he had rushed over, but that little girl, who was 2 years younger than him, had actually grabbed his fist in an instant. What's so great about being a mystic? Could a mystic cultivator disregard other people's life and death? A level 1 mystic cultivator's eyes were as high as the sky. You're a good-for-nothing through and through. The little girl's voice was monotonous, but everyone present could hear the chill in her voice. Crack. Ah! The pain from his wrist being broken made Xiao Tsong, this child, unable to resist opening his mouth and howling. Do mystic cultivators also know how to cry? The little girl's lips curled up mockingly. When she said this, she gave people a feeling of endless coldness. Chapter 167. Then cry even louder. Arbor flung Xiao Tsong away. The latter rolled to Xiao Yingchun's side with a loud crash. It startled Xiao Yingchun so much that she jumped to the side like a grasshopper and let out a piercing shriek. Shut up, Arbor reprimanded rudely. Xiao Yingchun's eyes widened in horror, and she instantly restrained her voice. Her body trembled uncontrollably, and she reflexively covered her mouth. Why did she feel that this child was so scary? Stop, Xiao Mu said faintly and walked to Madame Neili with small steps. Xiao Mu raised her head slightly and looked at her swollen cheeks and mouth with a cold glint in her eyes. Your son wants to kill me. He should be dead already. What do you want to do? Li Madame's mouth hurt, and she couldn't even speak clearly. She felt a chill run down her spine, as if she had fallen into an ice cellar. She suddenly felt a bit of regret. Why did she provoke this child? Back in Kwoto village, she clearly knew that although this child was young, he wasn't to be trifled with. I'll spare his life for father's sake. Arbor coldly glanced at Li Madame. Just this once. I won't. Before he could finish speaking, Xiao Tsong suddenly let out an agitated cry. Master! Xiao Tsong suddenly pounced on a figure walking quickly toward them and bawled loudly. He pointed at Arbor with resentment and anger. She wants to kill me. This little bitch wants to kill me. Master! Save me! Don't panic, disciple. The newcomer was middle-aged and wore daybreak sex uniform. He looked toward Arbor with a shrewd gaze. You're so daring, child. What's your background? Tell me your name. Arbor raised a brow and sneered rudely. I hit the young one and the old one jumps out to shout. You're really shameless. You little rascal, speaking so rudely. You really need someone to teach you a lesson. The middle-aged man said angrily with a dark expression. You want to teach me a lesson? Arbor expressionlessly swept a glance over his square face. His voice rose slightly with a hint of viciousness. You? Uncle Master Bai. You aren't her match, hurry and retreat. Duan Yu really wanted to kill these worrisome disciples. Did they think that he still had enough profound stones to pay those expensive ransom, when they were rushing to die in front of the little girl? Duan Yu, you are the disciple of our Daybreak sect master, the #1 person in the sect's younger generation. How can you stand by and do nothing when you see your little junior brother being humiliated? Uncle Master Bai turned his head and angrily rebuked Duan Yu with an, I'm very disappointed expression. No, Uncle Master Bai, this matter. Don't talk too much. Little girl, let me have a taste of your strength. You have to know that there's always someone better than you. You'll suffer losses in the future if you don't know the immensity of the heavens and earth. Boom! Arbor landed a flying kick in front of Uncle Master Bai. Immediately, he stomped a pit on the ground, and cracks began to appear from the middle, spreading outwards like a spider web. Uncle Master Bai's pupils contracted. The strength of this kick was beyond his expectations. At the same time, it was also beyond everyone's expectations. It was the layman who watched the show while the expert watched the knack. The 3 mentors from the Mystic Cultivator Association all sucked in a cold breath as they watched the rapidly moving little person in the field with bright eyes. After Arbor's flying kick, he didn't give Uncle Master Bai a chance to react. He had already leaped up and swiftly arrived in front of him. Chapter 168. Uncle Master Bai had yet to recover from his shock. Arbor's fist, which was covered in dense mystic energy, arrived in front of him with a whoosh. Bam! All of a sudden, Uncle Master Bai felt a sharp pain on the left side of his face. He could even hear a cracking sound coming from his cheekbone. Uncle Master Bai was struck by an old fist and was forced to take a few steps back. He bared his teeth and howled in pain. There were many gasps in the square, mixed with a few cries of surprise. Heavens! This child's seemingly delicate and light punch actually forced an Uncle Master from Daybreak sect to retreat so many steps. The sharp-eyed spectators clearly saw Uncle Master Bai's left cheek swelling at a visible speed, turning into a big red bun. It was evident how powerful that punch was. Master! Xiao Tsong watched in shock as his master was defeated in disbelief. In his opinion, Master simply did not need to lift half a finger to easily crush a small bug like Xiao Mu to death. However, the reality was so disappointing. Not to mention Xiao Tsong, even Uncle Master Bai himself found it unbelievable. He could only say sheepishly, damn girl, I was too careless just now, so you succeeded. Don't be too pleased with yourself. Before he could finish speaking, he heard high-pitched screams from the crowd behind him. What was going on? Uncle Master Bai turned around and saw a small figure leaping high into the air. She was holding a pitch-black ferrule, which glowed with an inky light under the morning light. It was instantly eye-catching. The little girl was clearly in front of him just now, so when did she move behind him? Wasn't this speed a little too slap? The ferrule fell and ruthlessly smacked Uncle Master Bai's head. Duan Yu, who was standing on the side with his hands clasped together, silently twitched his mouth. Uncle Master Bai only felt a line of blood slide down his forehead. He dazedly reached out to touch it and found that it was sticky. Sure enough, blood was gushing out. His expression instantly turned sinister, and he angrily roared at Arbor, damn girl, you're courting death. How could he still maintain that old face of his? How could Uncle Master Bai embarrass himself in front of so many commoners and people from the Mystic Cultivator Association? Immediately, he pressed his palms together and poured all of his profound energy into his palms. His eyes were filled with anger as he charged towards Arbor. Arbor did not dodge. When he saw Uncle Master Bai charging towards him with all his might, his eyes lit up. With a stomp on the ground, the little fellow's tiny body shot towards Uncle Master Bai like an arrow released from a bow. Is this what you want? Instead of dodging, he faced the attack head-on. Everyone present held their breaths and stared at the two of them without blinking. Closer, closer, the distance was getting closer and closer. Uncle Masterby suddenly felt immense pressure. He slowed down his pace. On the other hand, the little girl did not hesitate at all. Like a waterfall, she charged straight towards Uncle Masterby. Xiao Tsong clenched his fists nervously, not realizing that his palms were covered in cold sweat. Whoosh! Uncle Masterby bellowed. A thick mystic light exploded from his palms and surged toward the little girl. In the blink of an eye, the little girl's entire body was covered in dense mystic energy. It was as if she was immersed in the mystic light as she charged straight into Uncle Masterby's mystic light. An earth-shattering boom erupted, shocking everyone in the plaza and causing them to retreat like a receding tide. I'll send the 2 chapters at 7:30 p.m. in advance today. Because the author is going to chop off his hands tonight, mwahaha. Chapter 169. When the two collided, Uncle Masterby felt a weight on his chest. He screamed in panic and was sent flying backward involuntarily. After the mystic light dissipated, the little girl stood there by herself. She apathetically dispersed the mystic energy covering her body and expressionlessly looked at a shallow human-shaped pit not far away. Uncle Masterby was flung half a meter away by the collision of mystic energy. He was flung face down and sprawled in the shallow pit. Uncle Masterby didn't know if it was because he didn't have the face or the strength, but he couldn't sit up for a long time. Just like that, he sprawled on the plaza all by himself. The surrounding crowd of onlookers whispered to each other, causing him to lie in the pit with a flushed face. He had never been so humiliated like today. It was all that damn girl's fault. Ah! Uncle Masterby was so angry that he was about to die. Arbor raised her small hand and looked at the mystic energy covering it. Her mystic energy density was higher than normal people's, and would greatly benefit her in battle. If she encountered an opponent of the same cultivation level as her mystic energy should be enough to crush the other party. Today's battle had given her a certain understanding of her own strength. Uncle Masterby was a level 6 mystic cultivator, so it seemed that with the density of her mystic energy, it shouldn't be much of a problem for her to challenge a level 6 mystic cultivator. However, there was still a certain degree of difficulty in killing an opponent of a higher cultivation level in one strike. She needed to rely on other methods. Therefore, Uncle Masterby, who was lying on the ground and pretending to be dead. In reality, his injuries weren't too serious, so why did he have to stay in the pit and not get up? Arbor pursed her lips. She turned around and grabbed Xiao Hu's small hand, walking toward the 3 mentors of the Mystic Cultivator Association. When the 3 mentors saw Arbor walking over, their cheeks flushed with excitement. Heavens! She was so young, but her strength was so valiant that she could defeat a level 6 Mystic Cultivator in minutes. The Mystic Cultivator Association must do their best to win her over. They absolutely couldn't let go of such a genius. Suddenly, Uncle Masterby, who was sprawled on the ground, moved his fingers and flipped over. He looked at the back of the little girl who had humiliated him with a gloomy expression. Lying on the ground, he flicked something in the direction of Arbor. Bang! Before the item could even touch the corner of Arbor's clothes, it was swept away by a wave of energy. The pink sleeves rolled up, and the item that Uncle Masterby had flicked gently landed on the fair hand that had emerged from the sleeves. The woman's extremely languid voice floated up in the plaza. Why are the people of Daybreak sect becoming more and more incompetent? Throwing a level 5 profound energy bead at a little fellow's back. He's really shameless. Uncle Masterby propped himself up and stood up. His expression was extremely unpleasant. This mystic energy bead was a rare treasure in his possession. As the name implied, a level 5 profound energy bead was a bead condensed by a level 5 mystic cultivator. Once mystic energy was injected into it and flung out, it would instantly detonate the mystic energy inside. In Uncle Masterby's eyes, Qiao Mu, who had just dealt with his attack, was definitely an arrow at the end of its flight. It was impossible for her to dodge this level 5 profound energy bead's attack. However, his scheme was ruined by this damn woman before he could execute it. Uncle Masterby looked like he was about to vomit blood. Murong Suan, you really like to meddle in other people's business. TSK. The woman named Murong Sun floated to the ground and immediately crouched next to Arbor. She extended 2 fingers and pinched the little fellow's icy poker face without any explanation. Chapter 170. You're clearly so cute, so why do you have to be a little stoic? Smile. Her small face was so bouncy and comfortable to pinch. Murong Sun blinked at Arbor and suddenly guffawed. She hugged the child tightly and stood up, her fingers pinching the child's face non-stop. Until, slap, a crisp sound rang out. The child unceremoniously slapped away her claws. She expressionlessly glanced at her before her gaze landed on Murong Sun. Murong Sun was an extremely beautiful woman. Her facial features were quite gorgeous, and even though she wore light makeup, it still gave people a feeling of heavy ink and color. Also cough cough. Arbor extended his small paws and pushed her body away in disdain. Why did he have to bury her small face in those magnificent breasts? She almost couldn't breathe. Haha. Murong Sun laughed heartily and patiently guided her. Little fellow, I think I like your looks very much and your aptitude is quite good. How about you join my holy water sect's first peak? Darling Chow immediately shook her head so hard that her head was about to fall off. No, don't be in such a hurry to refuse. Master's heart will ache. Darling Chow. The 3 mentors from the Mystic Cultivator Association hastily surrounded her. One of them impatiently snatched Darling Chow from Murong Sun's hands and shouted, Mentor Murong, you're wrong. You're a mentor representing the Mystic Cultivator Association today. So how can you privately accept students? If you want to accept students, you have to accept them for our association. Murong Sun raised her fist and sent that mentor who spoke rudely flying. They watched as that pitiful mentor was sent flying into the sky in an arc by Mentor Murong, whose violence was off the charts. The other 2 mentors. Arbor, darling, don't be scared. Murong Sun cheerfully patted the child's head. With Master here, those strange uncles can't get close to you. Be good. Master will protect you. Be good, my ass. Arbor bared his small sharp teeth. He really wanted to bite her face. What kind of person was this? Why did she suddenly jump out and claim to be her master without any explanation? How could she give people room to refuse? Wait a minute. She was here today. For her proper business. My brother is coming to test. Oh my God, can you let me finish my sentence? Darling Chow, who suddenly felt that Murong Sun was hugging her and turning her around, didn't feel too good. Here, this level 5 mystic energy bead. Murong Sun stuffed an object the size of a jade bead into the child's hand. I'll give it to you to play with. Arbor narrowed his eyes and sent a trace of Xian energy into it. He flicked the Xian energy bead from his fingertips and sent it flying towards the dumbfounded Uncle Master Bai. Everyone, get out of the way. Duan Yu's folding fan fell to the ground with a clatter, and he only cared about dodging to the side with a shriek. Everyone retreated in all directions like the tide, leaving an empty space in the middle. Only Uncle Master Bai stood there in a daze. Bang! The profound energy orb exploded on Uncle Master Bai's body. Following Murong Sun's wild laughter, her lithe figure abruptly rose into the air with Darling Chow in her arms. She narrowed her eyes and looked down at the chaos below her. That's right. You took your revenge on the spot. It's completely in line with Master's style. Ha. Murong Sun guffawed non-stop. Darling Chow dumbly glanced at that fellow and lightly harumphed. In truth, she only wanted to test the power of this level 5 mystic energy bead. Chapter 171. This way the effect looked pretty good. There was only a shallow human-shaped pit on the ground, but it was destroyed by the level 5 mystic energy bead's destructive explosion. Uncle Master Bai's entire body sank into the human-shaped pit, and even the hem of his clothes could not be seen. Xiao Mu patted Murong Sun, who refused to let go of her, and strongly requested to get down. Murong Sun pursed her lips and reluctantly let go of Xiao Mu. Xiao Mu immediately trotted to the side of the human-shaped pit and poked her head to take a look. Uncle Master Bai was struggling out of the pit with all his might, and his nose was covered in dust, causing him to cough violently. Xiao Mu made a prompt decision and pulled out a repetition talisman from her sleeve. She flicked it at Uncle Master Bai, and it abruptly split open. The repetition talisman was an interesting talisman. It was not set so strictly to be immune to opponents one level higher than the user, unless the opponent was much stronger than the user. However, an unlucky person like Uncle Master Bai, whose cultivation was about the same as hers, could still be hit by it. Xiao Mu crouched beside the pit and watched Uncle Master Bai struggle to get up from the pit. He repeated the action of struggling to lift his head and spit out dust. Blah. Uncle Master Bai raised his afro head, and his face was smeared with soot. Blah. Why did he spit again? Blah. Something was wrong. After spitting out dust 3 times in a row, Uncle Master Bai belatedly realized that he seemed to be freaking repeating this action. His expression turned into horror, but unfortunately, his actions were still repeating the same action. How could this repetition setting be so perfect? She might not have caught Uncle Master Bai's action if she was a second slower or a second faster. Uncle Master Bai, what are you doing? Hurry up and crawl out. How could the Daybreak sect disciples know that Uncle Master Bai had already been hit? They all surrounded the pit and watched in astonishment as their Uncle Master Bai struggled in the pit. What the heck? Although this pit was not shallow, it should not be enough to trap Uncle Master Bai inside. Uncle Master Bai raised his afro head, tears about to fall from his eyes. Did he not want to crawl out of the pit? He was powerless. These damn brats. Hurry up and dig him out of the pit. Ow ow ow. Uncle Master Bai's hair, which had been perfectly fine, was now hanging limply on his head. His image had never been as ugly as it was today. The little fellow joined in the fun and watched for a while. Then he got up and walked out with a serious face. He didn't show any emotions. Compared to the twisted expressions on everyone's faces, the little girl's face was too calm. Duan Yu stole glances at the little fellow from time to time. Our dear Xiao Mu bounced to Xiao Hu's side and pulled his hand, walking to Murong Sun. Guide me. Little girl, do you want to join our Mystic Cultivator Association? The benefits are good, the treatment is good, and you can get a basic survival package every month. Whoosh! That member of the Mystic Cultivator Association who was licking his lips to seduce the girl had just finished speaking when Murong Sun flung him away, perfectly drawing a parabola in the air. Little fellow, don't listen to his nonsense. The treatment he received was simply not enough. Our Holy Water Sect's first peak will always welcome you with open doors. Guide big brother. Did you guys get the wrong person? I'm only a chaperone today. Okay. The last mentor from the Mystic Cultivator Association nodded vigorously. I'll take your brother's place. Bang! The bandit Murong Sun slashed the back of his neck, and that pitiful mentor collapsed with 2 streams of hot tears streaming down his face. President, this subordinate can't help you anymore. I'll do it. Murong Sun cheerfully reached out to take Xiao Hu. Chapter 172. Xiao Hu was a bit nervous and clenched his fists uneasily. Don't be nervous. Although Murong Sun looked unreliable, she was actually very experienced in guiding mentors. She had successfully guided more than 800 mystic cultivators, if not 1,000. Murong Sun sat there and put away a rare smile on her face, a bit of seriousness showing in her eyes. She gripped Xiao Hu's arm and a strand of mystic energy slowly seeped into Xiao Hu's wrist. Xiao Hu only felt a warm aura start circulating inside his body. It was very comfortable as it circled around him, and his nervousness slowly disappeared without a trace. He felt like he was soaking in a hot spring, and his warm body gradually relaxed. Xiao Hu opened his mouth slightly and closed his eyes with a silly smile. Xiao Tsong, who was standing at the edge of the pit, had his eyes fixed on the pit. When he saw this, a mocking smile appeared on his face once again. Little trash, you still want to become a mystic cultivator? You won't be able to in this lifetime. Xiao Tsong held his simply bandaged arm and harumphed while enduring the pain. His forehead was drenched in cold sweat. After that, he left the edge of the pit. He didn't want to take another look at his master who had embarrassed him. How useless. He couldn't even handle a 7-year-old child. He had actually worshipped such a useless master, and even his own face had been lost along with it. In the end, Uncle Master Bai was dragged out of the pit by 2 other Daybreak sect disciples. Why waste your energy and time on this little trash? Xiao Tsong crossed his arms and stood to the side. He did not dare to loudly rebuke in fear of being beaten up by Qiao Mu, so he only quietly grumbled. The mentor from the Mystic Cultivator Association, who was flung away by Murong Sun but ran back on his own, looked down at Xiao Tsong and frowned. He was so young but his words were so harsh. It truly made people unable to have a good impression of him. Little brother, you're wrong to say that. The mentor looked up in Murong Sun's direction, faint admiration surfacing on her face. Although this mentor Murong was unreliable most of the time. However, Mentor Murong is a very powerful mentor. As long as a child is guided by her, no one will fail to trigger their mystic meridians. Instructor Murong is a spirit channeling instructor who has a 100% success rate in opening his profound meridians. Xiao Tsong's gaze froze as he secretly clenched his fists. No, that's impossible. In the entire Quoto village's Qiao clan, he was the only true genius who successfully triggered his mystic meridians at the age of 9. Afterward, he was chosen by Daybreak Sect and was directly taken away to become Daybreak Sect's disciple, bringing honor and glory to his family. That Xiao who, for 3 years in a row, had entered the city every year to find a guide to trigger his meridians, but not once had he succeeded. He was the joke of old Xiao's family. He was a good-for-nothing. Xiao whose hand suddenly emitted a faint luster, and the dignified child suddenly opened his eyes, which were filled with great surprise. It's a success. The other onlookers in the square all looked envious. Heavens, a 10-year-old mystic cultivator was born in front of them again. I really want my children to do the same. The parents in the square all lowered their heads and looked at their children with hope. After 3 years of failure, the 10-year-old Xiao who finally succeeded in triggering his mystic meridians and officially stepped onto the path of a mystic cultivator. Thank you, Mentor Murong. Xiao who turned around and respectfully bowed to Murong Sun with a humble smile on his face. Chapter 173. Murong Sun's lips turned up in a faint smile. Aya, child, your mystic meridians are very good. You have a bright future. If it weren't for the fact that my sect doesn't accept male disciples, I really would have taken you in. He was praised by Mentor Murong. A bashful smile appeared on Xiao Hu's face, and he respectfully bowed to Murong Sun again. Thank you for your help, Mentor Murong. Murong Sun waved her hand. As the mentor of the Mystic Cultivator Association, helping young boys and girls become mystic cultivators is my duty. Mentor, please help our child trigger her mystic meridians. Mentor, please help my child. The crowd that surged forward with a whoosh nearly drowned Murong Sun in the sea of people. Xiaomu blended into the crowd and pattered toward several parents who were watching. She covered her mouth with her hand and secretly said to them, "Why aren't you going? That Mentor Murong in front is a mentor who can help the child trigger her mystic meridians with a 100% success rate. I only told you guys." Heavens! Big girl, let's go find Mentor Murong quickly. Around Murong Sun, the crowd was currently gathering at a terrifying speed, trapping her within. Hey child! A certain mentor who was drowned in the sea of people was exasperated as she watched the little girl run further and further away from her with small steps. The child even expressionlessly waved her hand at her through the crowd and made a farewell gesture. Murong Sun snorted with laughter, and her enchanting eyes curved up slightly. What an interesting child. Did you think you could run away? Since Master has taken a fancy to you, you're masters for the rest of your life. Sister, I really succeeded. I became a mystic cultivator. Xiao who only regained his wits after running a short distance behind Arbor and exclaimed excitedly. Even now it still felt like a dream. He really didn't expect that he would be able to step into the ranks of mystic cultivators one day. The disappointment every year already made him a bit afraid to try again. It could be seen that failure was not scary. The scariest thing was being timid and not daring to accept failure again and again. Arbor put his hands behind his back and suddenly turned around. At that moment, Xiao Hu caught a glimpse of a smile on his sister's frosty face. His sister's eyes were really beautiful. When she smiled, it was as if the stars were blooming in front of her eyes, the trees were blooming, and the spring breeze was caressing her face. It was incredibly warm. It was no longer that stoic face, no longer expressionless. His sister was the most beautiful girl he had ever seen in his life. "Brother, you're the best." Arbor stretched out a small fist and gently punched Xiao Hu's shoulder. He raised his hand and pointed in the direction of Pear Blossom Alley. "Let's go home." Xiao Hu nodded vigorously. "Let's go home, little sister." Hand in hand, the two siblings ran toward Pear Blossom Alley. They completely forgot about Xiaozong, who was clenching his fists and pulling a long face. They didn't even look at him. The little girl smiled at the student-looking idiot. The folding fan in Duan Yu's hand uncontrollably fell to the ground again, and his eyes were engraved with that blossoming smile. It turned out that she could also smile so warmly, beautifully, and vividly. However, you habitually wrap yourself in layer after layer of icy spikes and don't allow others to approach you or come out by yourself. Once you get close, perhaps you'll be pierced to pieces and drenched in blood. What kind of you is the real you? Duan Yu couldn't help but feel melancholy. Chapter 174. Father, Father. Xiao Hu shouted loudly as he ran through the door with a face full of joy. Arbor's lips curled up slightly as he watched the young boy excitedly rush through the door. The fragrance of flowers wafted through the courtyard. Mother sat in front of the stone table with little sister in her arms. She turned around and revealed a joyful smile at the two siblings. Father and second uncle put down the teacups in their hands and stood up to look at them. This life, it was completely different from before. She returned from hell and stepped on corpses and blood all over the place. All she asked for was a peaceful life and the well-being of her family. Ha 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 ha. My son has become a mystic cultivator. Second uncle laughed heartily. Little fellow, you're amazing. Xiao Zhongbang rubbed Xiao Hu's little head with a smile. You're a good child. Don't slack off in the future and work hard. Our Xiao family's hopes are all placed on children of your generation. Mother happily put down Xiao Lin in her hands. Second brother, I'm so happy today. Sit and chat for a while, I'll go take a look in the kitchen. Let's add more dishes tonight and have a lively meal with the whole family. Sister, celebrate. Good peaches. Xiao Lin bounced to her side and tugged at the corner of her skirt. Arbor couldn't help but laugh. He lowered his head and rubbed her little head before picking her up. There aren't any peaches, but there are other good ones. Do you want them? Dividing line, foodie's dividing line. City Lord's estate main hall. Gu Qingfeng raised the wine cup in his hand and smiled at everyone. Today, the Mystic Cultivator Association and the three sects are gathered here. This city lord will first toast everyone. At this special time, the wine and dishes are meager. Please forgive me for not entertaining everyone. City lord is too courteous. A middle-aged man sitting in the heavenly Dao sect's seat raised his wine cup and nodded lightly at Gu Qingfeng. Now that zombified monsters have appeared everywhere, the citizens of every town are having a hard time. We have dishes, meat and wine, and this is already an extremely luxurious enjoyment. A guide from the Mystic Cultivator Association said with a sigh. City Lord Gu Qingfeng nodded and raised his cup again. Thank you guides, for helping the children in the city awaken their mystic meridians. He especially wanted to thank Peak Master Murong. He successively helped 4 youths successfully trigger their profound meridians. If it weren't for the fact that it was impossible for Murong Sun to have more than 4 people trigger their meridians at once, she really wanted her to help all the children under 15 in the city trigger their meridians. Mentor Murong is truly someone we admire. The 3 mentors of the Mystic Cultivator Association also cast respectful gazes at Murong Sun. Murong Sun could only help 4 students awaken their mystic meridians at most. Afterwards, she could not help the children for at least 15 days. But even so, this kind of mystic awakening success rate and this kind of terrifying speed at creating mystic cultivators were very admirable. Murong Sun swirled the wine cup in her hand and smiled at the city lord. The city lord is very grateful to me? Of course. Gu Qingfeng nodded respectfully at Murong Sun. Peak Master Murong is an out-and-out mentor. Who wouldn't revere and be grateful to you? If that's the case, help me find someone. Murong Sun casually tossed a rolled-up portrait to Gu Qingfeng. The person in the portrait is my disciple. Don't be fooled by her stoic face. icy and unapproachable. However, her natural disposition is very mischievous. If I wasn't paying attention, she would run off without a trace. I'll have to trouble the city lord to help me find her. Everyone. Chapter 175. Gu Qingfeng was startled when he opened the painting and looked up at Murong Sun. Murong Sun was leaning seductively against the round-backed chair with her slender legs crossed. She raised her wrist at the stunned Gu Qingfeng and raised her lips to toast him from afar. Her misty eyes seemed to have the effect of starlight. It wasn't the wine that intoxicated her, but herself. Murong Sun, you evildoer. Your appearance makes it hard for all the men present to look away. A disciple that Peak Master Murong values so highly must be extraordinary. How about you let us take a look? The middle-aged man from Heavenly Dao sect asked with a smile. Gu Qingfeng asked Murong Sun for her opinion. After seeing her nod, he had his subordinate present the painting to Heavenly Dao sect. Murong Sun absent-mindedly sipped her wine and said aloofly, "My disciple is a natural beauty with an exceptional constitution, so there's no harm in letting you see her." Heavenly Dao sect's Guan Yongnian was startled when he opened the painting. Murong Sun raised her brows, an interesting smile on her lips. Could it be that Hall Master Guan also knows my disciple? Guan Yongnian closed the painting and nodded. My disciple brought a portrait the day before yesterday, and said that she found a 7-year-old mystic cultivator in a small place like Kwoto village. Our Heavenly Dao sect is also very interested in recruiting this kind of talent. Unfortunately, the zombie transformation happened too suddenly and everything happened too abruptly, so before we could find that child. A 7-year-old mystic cultivator? A dark-skinned woman from Daybreak sect with a rigid face narrowed her eyes and left her seat to walk to Hall Master Guan's side. She picked up the portrait in front of Hall Master Guan and glanced at it. She snorted and said, "It really is her." A 7-year-old mystic cultivator was rare these days. No, it should be said that it was extremely rare. In theory, every child could activate their mystic meridians when they turned 7, but there were only a few who could successfully activate their mystic meridians. When Lu Yumei heard that Murong Sun's disciple was a 7-year-old mystic cultivator, she felt a bit disgusted. It was indeed the stoic child that her disciple spoke of. "Murong Sun, how dare you? You wicked disciple is so young. But you're already so vicious and heartless." Lu Yumei glared at Peak Master Murong. "Do you know what she did? Not only did she injure my junior brother Bai, you even heavily injured several of my Daybreak sect's disciples. What is even more unforgivable is that you killed my disciple Li Xiang. Murong Sun, what else do you have to say? The 3 sects were originally of the same breath and branch, each mind their own business. You connived with your disciple to do such an evil thing. Shouldn't you give our Daybreak sect an explanation?" Gu Qingfeng's smile froze on his face. He only wanted to hold a small banquet to welcome the people from the 3 sects. Why are you arguing with each other again? Could he, the city lord, live a comfortable life? Murong Sun sipped the wine in her cup, and her slender eyes lifted slightly. Her breath reeked of alcohol, and she looked at Lu Yumei teasingly. "Hall Master Lu, what kind of explanation do you want?" Oh my god. Peak Master Murong, your current appearance is truly a living evildoer." Even Lu Yumei, who was a woman, could not help but blush. She nearly forgot what she was questioning Murong Sun about. "Murong Sun, as the Peak Master of the Holy Water sect, you should carry out the mission of the 3 sects being as one. Hand over your evil disciple. Let our Daybreak sect deal with her." Murong Sun's tipsy eyes were half-lidded, and a mesmerizing curve curved her eyes. Her thin lips parted in a teasing smile. "Don't tell me that this Peak Master still hasn't found my little disciple. Even if I did find her. TSK, how could this Peak Master's beloved disciple be handed over to you to deal with?" Chapter 176. Murong Sun. You? Lu Yomei's darkened face turned green from anger, and she swept the wine cup in her hand away without any explanation. Murong Sun narrowed her half-drunk eyes and shook her finger at Lu Yumei with a smile. "You're angry out of humiliation. Angry out of humiliation. Peak Master Murong, Gu Qingfeng jumped up from his stool and stretched out his hand, nervously looking at the wine cup flying toward Murong Sun. Murong Sun raised her cup with a smile and brushed her sleeves in a carefree manner. She clinked her cup against the wine cup flying toward her, and mystic energy seeped out of her fingertip as she lightly flicked it. That wine cup flew back at lightning speed and crashed toward Lu Yumei, who had an extremely unsightly expression, with an extremely tyrannical force. Lu Yumei took a deep breath and stretched out her hand to catch the wine cup. Suddenly, the entire wine cup shattered with a bang several inches away from her hand, turning into fine powder that instantly dissipated before her eyes. Everyone was flabbergasted. Lu Yumei's eyes even bulged out. Her fingers were still holding the cup, and Lu Yumei's mouth was slightly agape. She froze on the spot and did not know what to say. Just how strong was Murong Sun? Only then would he be able to control this surge of profound energy as he pleased, and manipulate it as he pleased. Murong Sun propped herself up on the table with one hand and crossed her legs. She raised the wine pot and drank a mouthful with a grin. She laughed loudly and said, "Hall Master Lu, it's impolite not to reciprocate. You should also receive a pot of mine." Her slender leg lightly lifted and kicked, and the wine pot shot toward Lu Yumei's head at a terrifying speed. "Peak Master Murong, my junior sister Lu has offended you. Please be magnanimous." A man sitting next to Lu Yumei hastily jumped up and blocked in front of Lu Yumei with a solemn expression. He circulated all the mystic energy in his body and barely caught the wine pot. His throat instantly tasted sweet, and he nearly could not hold back the mouthful of blood that was about to rush out. "Senior brother." Lu Yumei was startled and hastily reached out to support the man who stumbled back several steps. Murong Sun chuckled and put down her slender legs. She flicked her sleeves and stood up. "Thank you for your hospitality today, City Lord. This Peak Master still has important matters to attend to, so I'll take my leave first." Peak Master Murong, about the 3 sect's disciples heading to Qinghe Town for training. Guan Yongnian of the Heavenly Tao sect hastily stood up and asked. Murong Sun slowly turned her head to look at him. "Of course it will be held as scheduled. But according to our investigations, Qinghe Town has been completely occupied by zombified monsters. I'm afraid the disciples of the 3 sects won't be able to deal with them. How can one become a talent without training? Hall Master Guan, do you want to cultivate a little flower in a greenhouse? Or do you want to polish an ancient sword?" Murong Sun smiled faintly and walked outside with a flick of her sleeve. "It's fine if your 2 sects disciples don't have the guts to go. My Holy Water sect will keep the appointment as scheduled and carry out this life and death experience." Murong Sun's figure disappeared into the distance, only leaving behind a faint voice that lingered in everyone's ears. Peak Master Murong's words are very reasonable. Although Qinghe Town is fraught with danger, it can indeed temper the sect's disciples. Guan Yongnian of the Heavenly Tao sect nodded and said, "Since that's the case, my Heavenly Tao sect will also participate in this experience as scheduled." Hall Master. The person next to Guan Yongnian was startled and wanted to speak. However, Guan Yongnian waved his hand to stop him. "However, there are many zombified monsters gathered in Qinghe Town. I'm afraid the 21 disciples of the 3 sects won't be enough to deal with them. Therefore, I would like to request the City Lord to issue a mission order and gather all the mystic cultivators, body cultivators, and superhumans in the city to head to Qinghe Town together." Gu Qingfeng lightly bumped his fist. This City Lord has the same intention. Chapter 177. The next day, the City Lord's estate issued a Level 3 mission call. They were to gather all the mystic cultivators, body cultivators, and superhumans in the city to assist the disciples of the 3 sects in gathering food and supplies in Qinghe Town. It was said that there was a large granary in Qinghe Town with an abundance of food, enough to match 3 months of Shizhou City's food reserves. Qinghe Town? Arbor vaguely remembered this place. On the 2nd day after the zombie outbreak, all the residents in Qinghe Town died, and it became the zombies' base of operations. She remembered that in her previous life, the 3 sects had gathered a group of people to head to Qinghe Town to clear out the zombies and gather supplies. Unfortunately, all the disciples of the 3 sects died in that town, except for the holy water sex people who managed to escape. As mystic cultivators, every time the city lord's estate issued a special mission, the mission's contents would be directly transmitted to the mystic cultivators to show their importance. Arbor was no exception. She received the city lord's estate's summons early in the morning. She was flipping through the mission notice when Steward Chongzai jogged inside and hastily bowed. "Miss, the city lord is here." Arbor pressed down the notice and looked up at the steward. She nodded lightly. "Understood. Please ask City Lord Gu to wait for a moment. I'll be right there." Chongzai humbly agreed, then hurriedly turned around and hurriedly ran to the front hall to receive the city lord. Arbor tidied up her clothes before heading to the front hall. As soon as she entered the door, she saw a woman in a violet dress leaning against the side of the window. She slowly turned around, and she was extremely enchanting and charming. She tilted her head and smiled as she waved her hand at her. "Disciple, master has come to disturb you." Murong Sun's smile seemed to have been frozen in time for an instant. Under the shroud of the morning sun, it emitted a faint glow. However, after so many years, she would still remember her master's devilish appearance at this moment, waving at her while leaning against the window. No matter how quickly time passed and the past was like mayflies, she would not forget a single thing that she should remember. It was all stored in the deepest recesses of her memory at this moment. Xiaomu looked at this person in bewilderment and reflexively jumped back to avoid her slender fingers. "Why are you here?" Gu Qingfeng smiled bitterly. In reality, when he rushed out this morning and saw Murong Sun appearing behind him like a ghost, he also wanted to be like Xiaomu and ask Mentor Murong, "Why are you here?" "Disciple, you ruthlessly tricked Master yesterday, so Master naturally came early in the morning to have a good talk with you about life." Murong Sun reached out, intending to pinch the little fellow's cheeks. Arbor jumped back again and silently ignored the wry smile hanging on Murong Sun's lips. Gu Qingfeng coughed, trying to attract the attention of the master and disciple. The two of them turned their heads and glared at him at the same time, with a look that said, "What nonsense do you want to say? Hurry up and say it." Inexplicably, he felt that this pair of master and disciple even had the same actions and expressions. What was going on? Gu Qingfeng coughed dryly. Miss Chow, I wonder if you've received the mission summons from the City Lord's mansion. If Miss Chow completes this level 3 mission, then for the next year's residence rights will be. You want to talk about this? Arbor inched closer to the door. I know. You just need to notify me when the specific departure time is set. Even if the City Lord did not come today, she still decided to go to the Mission Distribution Center to sign up. Chapter 178. This was because she also wanted to go there and experience it. After all, ever since she was reborn, she hadn't officially experienced anything other than that accident at Hulun Mountain. She could only obtain more experience from actual combat and strengthen herself through continuous training. She never dared to slow down because she didn't have the right to do so. Moreover, she also wanted to take a look at how unconquerable Qinghe Town's zombie colony, which caused people to turn pale at the mere mention of it in her previous life, was. Do as you wish, City Lord. Arbor turned her head and slipped past Murong Sun's hand, practically dashing out the door. City Lord Gu looked up, and his lips involuntarily twitched. The child, who had always been calm and composed, actually looked like she was running away in a sorry state. That Murong Sun burst out in laughter. She took a wrong step and floated into the air, following the child as she said, "Little thing, how about you make a bet with Master? If you can trap Master for 15 minutes today, you win, and Master won't cause trouble for you in the future." Having a spirit floating behind her the whole way was so beautiful that she couldn't bear to look back. Arbor dashed out of Pear Blossom Alley. When she turned a corner, she happened to bump into Duanyu, who was walking toward her with a grin. She extended her hand to greet him. "Jojo, what a coincidence. Hello?" The youth looked dumbfoundedly at Mentor Murong, who floated past him. Xiaomu felt like she might have used up all the strength she had in the first half of her life. She had already placed 3 speed talismans on herself to keep up with her running speed. Then she looked back. Holy shit, the spirit behind her was still following her with a grin. Her expression didn't change at all. Arbor dashed toward the east of the city. She felt like she had run thousands of miles for 4 hours, but she still couldn't shake off that fellow behind her. Little one, don't blame Master for not reminding you. The direction you're running in is getting closer to the water area. That area is especially spacious, so you can't escape. A certain master drifted with Xiao Mu the whole way. Her face wasn't red and she wasn't out of breath. Oh, your sister. This body of water leads to the sea gazing. It can be considered a branch of the sea gazing. Don't be fooled by how calm the water is right now. At noon the high tide is 10%, but the current is very turbulent. A wide body of water appeared in Arbor's eyes. At this moment, she also stopped running and turned to look at the spirit behind her. Why aren't you running anymore? Murong Sun stopped in midair and looked at Xiao Mu with a smile. You have to keep your word. Arbor suddenly said this to her before tossing out a section of the spirit binding rope from his pocket and swiftly wrapping it around Murong Sun's wrist. With a tug and a pull, the child directly dragged the floating Murong Sun over and pattered to a nearby tree. She tied Murong Sun to the tree several times and tightly tied her up. Murong Sun's eyebrows twitched, and she looked at her youngest disciple in exasperation. Disciple, you shouldn't do this. If you tie me up here, the tide will rise in less than a quarter of an hour. If a wave comes, I will drown. Thud thud thud. The little fellow let go and threw Murong Sun aside before madly sprinting away. As he ran, he thought, the spirit binding rope is very powerful, so it shouldn't be a problem to bind Murong Sun for a quarter of an hour. Several minutes later, Xiao Mu paused in her steps and glanced back in distress. Murong Sun said the tide was about to rise. She was so strong, so she shouldn't drown. However, the spirit binding rope always tied people up and couldn't be freed. Arbor hesitated for a few seconds before deciding to run back to take a look. However, when he reached that place, he couldn't help but be dumbfounded. He didn't see Murong Sun, but he saw Duan Yu's pig-like teammate standing in the water and anxiously calling out to him, Jojo, Jojo. Arbor, fuck me, you're tied up by the spirit binding rope again. Chapter 179. Arbor waded over and came to Duan Yu's side. Why were you tied up here? Where's Murong Sun? Arbor looked at Duan Yu in bewilderment. Her small hand touched the rope binding Duan Yu's wrists and gently pulled. It was quite funny. After Mentor Murong escaped from the spirit binding rope, she tied Duan Yu to a tree. This was truly heaven's will. It was Duan Yu's turn to be unlucky. Duan Yu, don't think I can't tell that you're gloating just because your face is stoic. After Arbor untied Duan Yu's spirit binding rope, he quickly pulled Xiao Mu and ran toward the shore. The water level rose very quickly. In just a few minutes, the water had nearly crossed Arbor's shoulders. However, due to the high terrain in the city, the water could not rush into the city no matter how high it rose. The two could only swim to the shore after less than a minute. What are you doing with Peak Master Murong? Duan Yu asked in bewilderment as he paddled. I already explained to her that we're not friends. She's crazy and insisted on keeping me here as a hostage. She said you would come back to save me. But when I was tied up in the water by her, you didn't even know I was here. That's right. If I knew you were here, I wouldn't have bothered to come back. Arbor's mouth twitched, and she kept paddling her small arms toward the shore. Why do you have so much to say? We should hurry to the shore. For some reason she felt a chill on her back. That deranged mentor probably would not let them off so easily. Don't you think the sound of the water is getting louder? Duan Yu swam forward and kept looking back to pull Arbor. The little girl's arms and legs were small, so she definitely could not swim as fast as him. Arbor also heard the sound of splashing water. It seemed to be right next to their ears. The two of them turned their heads to take a look, and their faces were immediately filled with shock. Their eyes, one big and one small, almost popped out of their sockets. Fuck, the sudden wave behind them was too scary. It swept up about 4 to 5 meters high and splashed water everywhere. Shit, where did such a huge wave come from? Roar. Duan Yu only felt a huge wave rolling over him from behind. When it crashed down on his head, it freaking stunned him. With such a huge wave crashing down, Duan Yu was instantly swept into the water. Arbor's eyebrows twitched, and he stomped on Duan Yu's corpse that had been swept into the water by the waves. He swiftly paddled a few times and tried his best to struggle up into the air. The profound energy around his body floated and quickly spread out. Originally, he thought that once he circulated his profound energy, it would be an easy task to break free from the water. However, Arbor quickly discovered that his profound energy seemed to be suppressed. That was because there was an even higher level indescribable power that was suppressing her profound energy. "Instructor Murong, you're here," Arbor said with certainty. Although Murong Sun appeared to have left after she returned, the current situation made her very certain that Murong Sun was definitely hiding in the shadows and heartlessly watching them make a fool of themselves. The water suddenly parted to the sides, creating a shallow path. Murong Sun came out from behind the huge wave and lightly tapped the water's surface with her toes. She walked on the water like it was flat ground and cheerfully arrived in front of them. However, Arbor's gaze was fixed on her left hand. There was a nimble current of water circling around the back of Instructor Murong's hand. It slithered and spun endlessly like a living being. Chapter 180. What is that? Xiao Mu's gaze was immediately attracted by the water flowing around Murong Sun's hand. This is a water spirit. Murong Sun waved her hand, and the giant wave behind her rose again. Duan Yu's head just happened to pop out of the water. However, the giant wave crashed down again and slapped him back into the water. Arbor. She looked quite miserable. There are 5 spirits in this world, and this is only one of them. Murong Sun walked over on the water with a grin on her face. When your cultivation reaches a certain height, you can gradually sense a trace of the origin power in this world. At that time, I'll be able to comprehend this trace of origin energy. Of course, it's very difficult to comprehend the 5 spirits on our Seekong planet. Moreover, it would be suppressed. It could even be said that it was basically impossible to comprehend the origin of the 5 spirits on this godforsaken Seekong planet. However, the little fellow did not need to understand this clearly yet. Arbor was pensive. She looked into the distance, and her thoughts also drifted away. She remembered that person. He could control lightning and fire. That pair of dark green jade-like eyes flickered with a demonic light under the lightning and fire's illumination. So these were the 5 spirits, the origin power of this world. They could completely suppress mystic energy. The difference between him and her was like heaven and earth. What if they met again? Would she become someone else's pet again? Would she be raised and fed? What a terrifying fate. Arbor shuddered, feeling a chill in her heart. A warm thin blanket wrapped around her small body. Murong Sun reached out and picked her up. "Let's go home. Don't catch a cold." Arbor's icy hand pressed against Murong Sun's cheek, and she earnestly looked at her. "Master, will I be as strong as you in the future?" This child's eyes were as black as 2 flawless gems, extremely beautiful. Murong Sun was startled, and her heart almost melted with this soft call. She laughed loudly and carried Arbor away, leaving behind only a faint voice. "My good disciple, with your aptitude, you'll definitely surpass Master in a few years. At that time, you must remember to protect Master." Duan Yu finally managed to climb ashore. Looking at the empty waters in front of him, he felt as if 10,000 curses were running through his heart. Have the 2 of you completely forgotten about me? Is it really okay for you guys to be like this? One day later, all the carriages heading to Qinghe town gathered at the plaza in the center of the town. The disciples of the 3 sects each took their own spot, 7 in a team. The mystic cultivators and body cultivators gathered by the city lord's estate were gathered together. The holy water sect's side was the liveliest in the plaza. The 7 celestial maidens surrounded a little stoic and chattered incessantly, fighting for a hug. "Little junior sister. I'm your second peak senior sister Yuge. I am Li Ling from the 3rd summit." "Junior sister, ignore them. The 2 of us are your true senior sisters. You don't have to care about the others. Jojo, let's form a team later, Bo." Before Duan Yu could approach the 7 celestial maidens' encirclement, he was suddenly forced back by 2 cold swords. "Senior sisters of the Holy Water Sect. I'm Duan Yu from the Daybreak Sect. I'm friends with your little junior sister. We're together. Duan Yu pointed at himself and Arbor with a chuckle. "Little junior sister, this is your friend?" Yes, we're together. Duan Yu forced his way through the crowd and ran to Arbor's side in high spirits.